No. That's fucking world. Oh. Yeah, yeah. He said he was. When you see him, you'll know exactly that's who he is.
Oh, Miles is on.
He looks exactly like a David. In the best possible.
We do have that.
Oh, God, I wish. Matt. Oh. Yeah. It is 6 o'clock. I will call this council workshop and public forum to order. Please rise for the flag. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll start with roll call this evening.
Councilmember Marcus, Councilmember Cummings, Councilmember Wenzel.
Here.
Councilmember Robinson had a pre-scheduled family engagement and is not able to be here tonight. And but I spoke to him and I made sure that I got any questions that he might have to make sure that they're brought up on the recording and public record. So, and Councilmember Ansich is running late. Something came up at the last minute. He should be about 15 minutes late, but he will be here. Just kind of, I guess not ground rules, but I think most everybody here knows where the bathrooms are. If you need them, there's some water in the back if anyone would like it. The special meeting tonight is specifically to just kind of discuss and ask questions regarding the potential RFA and whether or not Cosmopolis is a fit to move forward with it or what, just to learn more about it. So this is to kind of assist the city council in deciding if it's something that we want to move forward with. So comments and questions are to be on the RFA specifically. This is just kind of a forum to learn more. And so I just ask that we just ask questions, maintain some decorum and kind of have a good back and forth conversation. First part of the meeting is going to be for the council and staff to ask questions. And then there's going to be an opportunity for the public to ask any questions that they have and just kind of have an open dialogue. We're not going to put a time limit like we do on public comment. Usually we want to have kind of an open conversation, but we do ask that people kind of give everyone a little bit of time. And again, as the RFA planning committee, still in the ongoing process of adjusting the plan, what residents saw during previous iterations of the RFA when it came to voters and what has happened since last meeting, there could be changes before and if it does go out to voters again. So what is, as it sits now, can adjust, and based on public comment, that's what this is for. So we're gonna work, myself, staff, the council, and Chief Miller, Chief Golden, and Corey from the city of Holcomb, gonna answer any questions that we can, but some may have to go and respond to after. But the hope is to just have as much as we can on hand. So I think that's about it. So I don't know if you guys want to do a brief overview.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, just in case, I
We have
think,
a lot more people here than the council meeting, so.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody got to hear my spiel.
Yeah.
So,
please do.
like I said before, I like to stand up, so I'm gonna walk around.
Huh?
All right, so those of you who don't know me, Matt Miller, Brooklyn Fire Chief. I live here in Cosmopolis. I know many of you from around town. Real quick overview, I'll try to be brief because I know there's lots of questions. 4 years ago, our chief retired. With that, the cities of Aberdeen and Hope got together and contracted services with the then chief and assistant chief of Aberdeen. They oversaw both departments. During that time, they hired ESCI, which is a consulting firm that runs a study to look into should Aberdeen and Hope consolidate. With that, should they consolidate? How should they consolidate? How will it work? Took a year and a half of doing all that. I think some of you were probably involved at the time when Cosmopolis was asked if they wanted to be part of that. Chose not to at the time for legitimate decision. And as we went on, it took a year and a half. We got the study back and I like the pace. So if you guys get tired of watching these films for them. We got that back. With that, we formed a regional fire authority planning committee, which consisted of 3 council members from Aberdeen, 3 from Hopeland, Chief Hubbard, who is now retired, myself, and Assistant Chief Golding, as well as Corey, Hopeland Finance Director. And am I missing anybody? Who? Oh, Melissa, that's retired as well. Spent a year going through all that, coming up with a plan. That plan is on the Aberdeen and Hopeland website, and it kind of just details everything that was in the plan. Inside that plan, one of the kickers was we were asking for a fire benefit charge. That fire benefit charge was above and beyond what everybody's paying now to get additional personnel between Aberdeen and Hopeland. The first time we ran it, we missed by 14 votes. The second time it missed by even more. Most of the feedback that we got back was because of the price increase. The fire benefit charge was a large chunk to buy it off. We were trying to find some way to increase our manpower. If you're not aware, Aberdeen and Hopeland are the 2 busiest departments in the county. But if you start comparing our call volume versus our staffing, we are busier than places like Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, Graham Fire, you name it. At Hopeland in 2021, actually, and I didn't run every single department in the state, ran 172 calls per person per year, which out of the 20 departments I ran was the highest. So we were just, and Aberdeen was right behind us. So very, very busy, definite need for staff, not a lot of funds. We tried to get those funds, it didn't pass. So tried it again in February. Like I said, it didn't pass on that time as well. So we kind of sat back, licked our wounds and tried to figure out what are we going to do. In that, obviously, all of you are aware of the situation that's going on in Cosmopolis and what happened here. Got some conversations going and said, hey, would you be interested in this while we're revamping this plan? So where we are today is Cosmopolis has not said, yes, we are in. That's why everybody's here today. Your council and the mayor want public input to see if this is something that the citizens want to pay for or be part of. And that's kind of where we are today. So again, any questions, we're here to answer.
Thank you. Yeah, so the Cosmopolis, we joined the planning committee June. Yeah, in June. And so it's myself, Councilmember Wenzel, and Councilmember Cummings, because it has to be 3 elected officials as per RCW. And so we've been kind of working through and looking to see how the plan would work with 3 cities instead of 2 as it was. So it's an ongoing kind of back and forth, and we haven't officially signed on by any means as to we're going to the ballot. I mean, there's nothing official that it's even going to the ballot at all at this point, but we've had a number of discussions and part of those meetings, and we've talked about it at the last council meeting as well, but we wanted to kind of open it up and have a little more input. And I know there's a lot of questions, especially even after the last 2 times it's run. So council comments, I mean, we've talked about it a lot, but opportunity for the council to ask any questions that might be open. And yeah. I'll start. I mean, Councilmember Robinson, he had a couple questions. He just got appointed, so he's kind of coming in late to the conversation, but he said, I think my biggest question is what the financial difference between the RFA option and the current or proposed other options we might pursue. And he says, especially as it applies to the cost for citizens. And that's kind of part of the discussion that we're looking into how much the cost would be. I mean, for each city, for the city of Cosmopolis, as it sits right now and kind of planning, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the costs per resident.
So the increased cost per resident would be approximately on your property taxes, there would be an EMS levy that the city of Causey and the city of Aberdeen are currently not paying, and that's 50 cents per 1,000. So as an example, on $150,000 home, that would be about $75. And then, on your monthly utility fee or your monthly utility bill, it would currently, I believe you're paying like $675, correct? So that would increase to $26.54. And these are all very rough estimates, but, we want to be open and honest with the cost. So that in total is about a $19 increase per month that you would see on your utility bill. So your big increase would be on your utility bill. That is collected by the city, and then the city would then give the revenues to the RFA. So your monthly costs would increase on your utility bill by around $19 per month, and then your property taxes would increase 50 cents per 1,000, which on $150,000 home, that's around $75 a year.
When we're looking at some of those costs, the costs for the fire department as it sits now with the budget and everything are, I mean, the number, it's $1 or so off, but it's fairly comparable. And the money that we're paying Aberdeen right now on a monthly is coming out of the budget for the fire department. So it's fairly similar. The difference would be coming out of the general fund and the taxes that are coming into the city. And it would be coming onto the citizens at that point, which would make other changes within the city because some of the funds that are brought into EMS and that are part of that also fund some of the stormwater or some of the water charges and different things. So it would be a shift of those funds into another area, but then, of course, there would be additional fees on property taxes if this were to go forward. And that's, yeah, 50 cents per 1,000. So
That would be
depending,
big.
yeah. And then, of course, I mean, if your house goes up in value, that cost doesn't, it spreads out. It's not a just forever 50 cents per 1,000. You add an addition, it doesn't just double your cost or whatever, but
And the $1.50 regular levy for the RFA would come out of what the city already gets, so that's not an increase to the citizens at all. It would strictly come out of the city's coffers and go to the RFA.
Yeah.
So they're moving it from one pocket to the other. So it's literally just the increase on the EMS fee on your utility bill and the 50 cents per 1,000.
And then as far as Councilmember Robinson's question, as far as other proposed options, the city did look into getting a report from ESCI, like Chief Miller had said. A turnaround for a report like that to look at what we are and what kind of options could be, whether it be, is it more financially stable to do this or a district or fund it for ourselves? There's like an 8 to 12 week turnaround on that type of report. Some of it could be rushed, but we don't have like a full financial picture of what all those would be. And I don't know if that report would even say,
No,
it'll give an idea, but it doesn't say like, oh, this is the best option for you. It just gives us a broader overlook.
The study is very beneficial and as it points out some of your good things and it also points out your bad things.
Mhm.
And that's what happened to us was it pointed out that in Hoquiam alone, it says you are underpaying your firefighters and you're understaffing your fire department and you're under equipped. Not holding anything against the city of Hoquiam because we're not the richest city in the world. But that's pretty much what they pointed out, that the city of Hoquiam should have 3 more firefighters to manage stations. City of Aberdeen, they said, same thing, except you guys are down 7 firefighters. And that's based off of NFP standards, call volume, and all the ancillary functions that we try to provide, public education, fire marshal services, plan review, business inspections and all of that. So that's where they came up with it. And the study is there, it's good. It doesn't give you an answer. It just says, here's all your choices and you can pick one. And with that, that's where the RFA committee came in, was they picked the RFA.
we, as in the cities, pick the RFA.
Yeah. And then the group was formed.
Yeah. So they do not tell you what you should do. They do not tell you, they literally just lay out your options.
And I feel like, I mean, I don't need to tell anybody in this room that, I mean, the funding for the fire department is gonna need to go up one way or another, so. Whether or not it's an increase of $19 on the EMS or other, there is gonna have to be some sort of increase. To cover our needs, and so that's what we're looking at on this is the RFA. A good option for us, and really, is this something that the citizens would want, or is there another option and we just fund it in-house? That's what we're looking at before we put any sort of yay or nay on if we want to be a part of and proposed RFA. Questions? Miles, do you have anything, any questions?
No questions, just because I've been part of the process. I'm good right now.
We've been part of the planning, and planning is going to continue on, and so hopefully we'll get some insight and that can lead us to what we want to do. But following that, I mean, it's just, we'll open it up to the floor. So questions from people, whether about our RFA related, of course, and yeah, and we're Frank, go right ahead. But do introduce yourself.
Frank Chestnut, 812, before, I've got probably a multitude of questions. But before I ask them, what is this thing supposed to look like? We're talking conceptually right now, but where is it headed for? Who manages what building? What happens to this one? What happens to our equipment? Who assumes the assets? Who assumes liabilities? In other words, what is the organizational structure of the proposed RFA between three cities going to look like to begin with?
Okay, so I can,
Yeah,
I'll tackle that. So as stipulated in the RFA plan, that the plan is going to kind of dictate what you're asking, it looks like. So all three fire departments will all combine into the RFA and come out of the cities and be its own entity. With its own sole purpose of fire and EMS. So it gets it out of the cities and then it maintains itself, just much like a fire district, but they just cover the cities. So as far as the equipment, stations and things of that nature, all of that transfers into the RFA. And the RFA will operate them. So that's the equipment and station type situation. You get to the staffing, all the staffing, including whatever happens here in Cosmopolis, becomes under that umbrella. So there's no intent to lose positions or lose people because of where you're at. Everybody gets put into the RFA structure. The headquarters would be ran out of the Aberdeen headquarters, just because it's kind of a more centrally located area station, and everything be kind of ran out from there.
You said operating equipment, you said nothing about ownership. Can you clarify that?
Okay, yes, yeah, thank you. So ownership does transfer of the equipment to the RFA. The one thing that does not transfer ownership are the facilities. They will stay initially as property of the city. And the RFA would be using those. And then if the RFA decides to vacate those for some reason, they go right back to the city.
And it would run similar to like a fire district, so there would be a commissioner structure. So if it got passed, then commissioners would be voted in from each city that would then oversee it, and there would likely be staffing changes, but I mean, the
Yeah, so
administrative
your
structure is
governance
still,
board- Yeah,
yeah,
your governance board would be a representative, one from each city voted in. They would be much like the mayor said, a fire commissioner board of 3 people. They would be your governing board, and under that is going to be the fire chief. Who is going to be running the day-to-day operations of the department and broken down from there.
And so a reason why we really want we want to know if Causey wants to participate or not. Because if Causey doesn't say yes now, then you actually lose your seat as an elected party. So you don't have a seat as an elected official if Causey were to join in later. So right now, the way that we've kind of been working on the plan since June, it's an elected official from Causey, Aberdeen, Hopeman. If Causey chooses not to join, then the elected parties will just be Aberdeen, Oakland, and majority. Yeah, or not large, so, so, and if Kazi were to join in later on after the fact, that's okay too, but you do not have, will not have a seat at the.
The planning and how everything kind of runs as far as departments wise, that's still process of planning. At the last meeting, we were talking about that and what would the Cosmopolis role be? And as we had spoke with Chief Hubbard for a while, that the idea is that there could be a volunteer capacity, but it would adjust from just a like a community-based volunteer structure to almost like a training ground. So we would make use of the kind of live in the beds and do almost like a training ground and assist that. And as it sits right now, the discussion is that's what this facility would be or has the potential to be. And there could be a battalion chief on here on a regular, and there would just be people here on shifts as like similar to Raymond does, I think. I think they still do that, where there would be people here on a regular basis and regular schedule. That process and how that looks is still being
And
planned.
I can speak a little bit to that
Yeah.
concept. Is one of the concepts we really kind of talked about, and as the mayor mentioned, how is the staffing at Cosmopolis? And one of the things that we kind of talked about, and this is still in early stages of trying to figure out what truly it will look like. But starting up we refer to as a resident program.
Thank you.
To where you actually have people that live at the fire station. And for that, they have to put so much time in and they're here. So, there's just like having a paid person here, ready to go on a call. So that concept and using that as the mayor mentioned about, a training ground for the concept for us is a way to hire local people and give them the opportunity to get into the fire service. One of the things we struggle with, Matt and I both do, is we have nowhere in Aberdeen or Hopiam that our people can volunteer. If a citizen wants to, we have to, sorry, we don't have volunteers and we have to push them away to other districts. We'll recommend Cosmopolis, we'll recommend District 2, District 6, or different areas that may or may not take them as volunteers. This number one allows more people to get involved in that. It gives us also a pipeline for people locally who want to get into the profession, that opportunity to kind of on the job training and a full for us to hopefully hire out.
That answer your question, Frank? The floor is open. I mean, if there's follow-ups or anything on that, or if there's something that didn't get answered. I saw a hand back there.
My name's Terry Jeff, I'm from Cosmopolis. Two questions. One is, where does the money come from for the study? Who do you think that from?
General fund or funding that's from the department, so city funds.
Second of all, if Holcomb is down firefighters and Aberdeen is down, Kazi has 0. How does that work? It's not like blaming two cities.
So when we say they're down, it's due to the call volume compared to our staff. Currently, Aberdeen is covering all 100% of EMS and fire calls and have been for 8 months, 9 months-ish.
Give or take.
And if you even back up further, is Aberdeen has provided ALS and BLS transport services to the city of Cosmopolis for, I don't know. So I won't say small, but there's not a huge amount of calls that come from Kazi, but it's a decent amount. There's enough to require somebody to be here, obviously. It's gonna be absorbed into the system. And with that, Aberdeen and Hoquiam have already started to merge more of our responses. So back up a little bit, you guys had a fire over at the Cosmo a month ago now, and I was here. I had 2 of my engines from Hoquiam over here. So we've already started to build this bigger thing, and we'd really like to have Cosmopolis in that to keep building this bigger thing. Unfortunately, with the way things are going, you almost have to get bigger or get really small. And it's not that we're gonna be huge, we're still not the size of an Olympia or anything close to that. But we're just trying to get bigger, and that's gonna help us spread our manpower and our equipment out more. And when, I'm not gonna say if, when we build up the volunteer structure back in here, that's just gonna be part of the whole system that's gonna cover Aberdeen, Hopeland, and Cosmopolis.
Yeah, and we are, both cities right now, or both departments are fully staffed. That,
Okay.
they're just, that was
I
per the,
misunderstood.
Sorry,
That was
that
part
was
of-
probably my fault. I apologize. We are fully staffed as of today.
Oh.
But per the study combined, we need more people. If you rank your call volume versus your man. So we should have more people. Hoquiam has 21 firefighters, and today we have 21 firefighters. So we're not understaffed, or we're not missing people. Sorry for the,
100% budgeted position.
yes, 100% budgeted.
Did you have another question along with that?
No, I just wondered about where the money for that.
I'm gonna continue to stand.
Yeah.
Just easier.
You introduce yourself just because. Thank you. Sorry.
So you said that the building is possible.
Yes.
You said everything in it belongs to the fire. Like random fire.
Not the new fire truck. But that's only because it's a,
It still has a debt on it.
yeah, because that was funded, that specific truck was not funded through like a bond through the citizens, so it's not like a transferable thing. Cause so that is a debt that the city still has. So that was that wasn't something that was kind of part of the plan. That's just because of the way that it was paid for. That's something we'll have to keep paying for no matter what.
so,
But everything else.
so like,
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, all the fire stuff transfers into.
And there's an example of the citizens of Oakland 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Voted to approve for a new engine. And so they went out to bond with what citizens voted for. We've now got that engine. You will never be paying for that engine. That bond is sticking with the citizens of Oakland
cause they voted,
because they voted for it.
but that engine will become, once it's.
The
officially
engine will
paid
become
for,
part of
it
it.
will-
Yeah, the same
Well-
Aberdeen and Holcomb aren't gonna be paying for that engine. Yeah, they would, yeah. I mean, it's a poor analogy, but it's like buying a car for your kid, like you're still paying it, but someone else is driving it. So,
It's kind of one of those things that it's a debt that was incurred by the city, so we don't want another, I mean. We don't want other citizens from other cities to have to pay for debt that a certain city, like for instance, we have an ambulance that's almost paid off, and then we have our fire truck. But we don't want the other cities, Aberdeen and Conway, to pay for our debt that our citizens voted on. So that's the responsibility of.
and if,
That kind of goes to the fire station of why we're saying the city still owns the fire station. Because currently Aberdeen is going through talks, discussions of building new fire stations for them. You don't want, it, right? Neither do the people in Hopeland, right? So there's what the part of the plan is saying is that the station is gonna stay with that city. Until such time that the RFA has the funds to take it over,
Or
which may be never.
so it'd be like one of like the $1 a year type arrangements or whatever. Yes, something, but then the same thing, so if the RFA get formed, whether it be just Aberdeen Holcomb or Aberdeen Holcomb Kazi. If there's another truck and it goes out to bond, then everybody pays.
Gonna be in-
because everybody will be voting.
But that would be a voted for thing.
Very true. So let's say pass. And. We'll have this 50 cents per gallon. So what happens that the year?
So you, yes and no, so there's a thing like, you can go out for like an excess levy or an M&O levy, which is very similar to what Southeast, fire authority has. So they came out and asked for extra money, but again, that has to be voted upon and approved. So the EMS levy is, every, I believe it's 5 or 7 years. I think it's 5 or 7, and then, yeah, when it's originally implemented, and then after that, it can become a permanent levy if approved by the voters. And then for the O&M levy, I don't know, to be honest, if that's annual. Is it annual? So that would be based upon the budgeted expenditures and what is needed by the RFA. Well, it would be a set fee as in whatever is approved by citizens, like the RFA couldn't just increase it. I mean, the citizens would vote on a certain levy amount and that's all the RFA would get.
But if they asked for 200, like, I mean, just super generic numbers, 200,000 this year, and then next year they, oh, well, we need to ask for 500,000, they could ask for it, but then the voters would have to approve that, similar to, yeah, like Elma PD does theirs every 2 years, a year or two, and similar, same as any other district.
So that would be on your regular property
Yeah.
taxes. Yeah, no, this would have to be voted upon every year. It would not be an automatic increase like that.
And
That's a
that
good
is a
question.
super majority vote as well. And those
For
are
element.
M and O's and
I don't know.
another
about
levy.
that.
If it's a new fee, so if they put out, if it got passed and then they wanted to do an excess levy, it has to be a super majority the first year. If they're extending the levy, and if it's the same thing, similar to schools, fire districts and everybody else, if they're just doing the same thing again, it's just a majority. But the first time has to be a super.
And currently, we do not have the M&O levy as a funding plan, so.
That's one of the things where I said we went to our room and kind of rethought the money, asking for the additional money the first time was the biggest negative that we got back. So we pulled that out of the plan.
And we relooked at the entire funding mechanism, so we can really change it.
The vote for the RFA was super majority.
It was with the benefit chart, but since we redid the funding mechanism, now it's not.
And that's set by the state. If there's like the same with like an M&O levy, if there's a new charge or an excess charge, then it has to be the super majority. So if it went through, it would just have to be a 50 plus one.
Good question. So that's the regular levy. So you're currently paying that. You're currently paying that, but it's to the city. It would be deducted from the city and that revenue would go to the RFA. Correct. So that would not be an additional fee. You are currently paying that right now to the city.
And that's similar to, like Jerry mentioned, with the hospital and the school, there's only so much of the pie that can be taken out, and this piece of pie just shifts from one place to the other. You couldn't have like another hospital district and add more and add more and add more. There's only whatever percentage.
So what happens is, when it comes to property taxes, there's a set threshold. And when a new junior taxing district comes in, it actually deducts from the city. So that's why, so for instance, when the hospital is created, all the cities actually lost, or their property taxes were reduced because it was shifted to the hospital. So the city property their regular property taxes will be reduced and shifted to the RFA. So regular property tax, that $1.50, you will actually not see an increase in because you're currently paying it to the city. The city will be decreased as to what they're given property tax wise, and it will be shifted to the RFA.
Which would require an adjustment of how the city funds things as well. Like I said, that there's funds that for whatever, there's a portion that comes out for water or streets or whatever, or those funds. So those will have to be adjusted as how those are done.
So the basic $1.50 per thousand is not an increase.
Does anybody run the figures on what the volunteer department operated on? What we do?
For
I have not, but I could do that and get that to you tomorrow if you'd like. I have Kathy's email address.
Are you talking about what the total costs were?
What the city of Cosmopolis paying
For our
Per
annual
thousand.
budget,
for the volunteer department?
So I did that for Aberdeen and Hookland. I did not do that for Cosby because I did it when we first started the RFA committee. I pulled those figures, but I would be more than happy to pull those for Cosby and I can run them too.
Yeah. What our value.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean, we know how
The
much
annual budget.
how much the budget was, but not as it relates. to-
So, yeah, you
Not,
It's
yeah,
an easy calculation. I can do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I can email it to you too.
Yeah. Thank you.
So
John.
what was the-
Yeah, introduce for the, thanks, John.
What was the, what is the volunteer?
Right now, like with the fire truck payments, we're around 250,000 a year.
Well, what is it last?
I don't have the budget numbers right in front of me, but I can get that to you.
It's like,
It was less last year because of the pandemic. With the mill having been shut down. We really had to reduce our overall budgets everywhere.
Yeah.
And then when the mill did come back online, we were so unsure of how our revenue sources were gonna run. We really kept everything very conservative in all departments across the board.
So when we had a fire department, we had less money, and now we don't have a fire department, and there's a bigger money.
well,
Well, revenue
if we
sources.
go, I mean, the COVID times are kind of outside. If you look at the budget now versus the budget pre-pandemic, it was fairly comparable. minus-
2018 and 2019 were very comparable to this year's budget. In fact, we're still a little bit less, but we're more comparable. We pay $44,000 a year for the fire truck. Yes. And it's a 13-year loan and we're 2 years into it, 2 full years into it. Starting over.
Yes, Steve.
Steve Davis, because there's a distinct difference in budget and actual spend. And especially with fire. Historically. What was budgeted for and what the actual were always.
Is there a question?
Which we should be hearing what it actually costs. The lumber department, not much the lumber. You agree with that, Julie?
Did you say that again, Steve? I want to make sure I understand.
Distinct difference between what's budgeted and what is actually spent.
It varies every year. Sometimes you budget because you think you're gonna be doing some extra training or you have, like. Maybe you have to buy turnout gear this year, but you don't the next year. So that can always vary, or something, for example, transmission goes out in your fire truck. Well, now your expenditures are gonna exceed your budget. Because you had some maintenance and repairs that you weren't expecting.
And historically. Cosmopolis Fire Department's always returned money back into the general fund versus.
There's no return. I mean, it varies every year. I couldn't say without going through and doing
Spend.
the analysis.
Well, I mean, for every department, if we spent up to the dollar or more than what was budgeted, so every department should spend less than what was,
That's the-
that was budgeted.
If you go over your actual budgeted amount, you will get in huge trouble by the state auditor.
That's why you have the minutes and
And we've had to do
Yeah.
budget amendments, like the general fund, we've done them before for the general fund, which the fire department does fall under. So, but like tonight's discussion is really about the RFA and how it's going to affect Cosmopolis and what it's gonna cost and what it's gonna do for us.
Go ahead, Steve.
So, Steve Davis, so. Now, as we sit tonight, where it's September 7th. What are the crucial dates associated with this? When you have to have a decision, when does Cosmopolis have to make a decision to join the RFA? And will there be a written plan before the council of Cosmopolis votes for the citizens to join or not join the deal?
Where the council's at right now and where the kind of planning committee is that. The planning committee is adjusting the plan, I mean, really going page by page and line by line and going from 2 to 3. So the city kind of needs to get an idea, is this something we want to keep planning? Or do we want to step away and let it go back to the two? There's not a specific date that is set, that the plan would be ready before the council approved it to go to any sort of ballot, or even before it got brought to the council, but there's not a definitive hard date as it is, but the sooner that we make a decision, if we want to be a part of this process, the better it would be for the plan. So,
Can I add on that?
yeah,
So our goal, it's a goal that we're shooting for, is to take this to a February ballot. And we understand that this is putting Ozzy into a little bit of a pinch. We've been working on it for a few months now, and we've still got a little bit of time to go. On the flip side, Aberdeen and Hopewell have been working on this for 4 years. It failed the first couple of times, like I said, we believe it would be due to the rise in cost. We kicked that out, tried to bring it back down to where they are today. So it's not like we're in a hurry, have to do it tomorrow type of thing, but remember, we've been working on this for 4 years and then saw what was happening over here, so, hey, you guys want to be part of this. You didn't want to before, but do you want to now? As far as the plan, oh, let me back up, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So in order to vote for it in February, you have to submit it to the county 60 days.
it's like December 10th.
December 10th. In order to do that, all 3 city councils have to approve it, the plan as written. And because of holidays, and I'm not sure what happens in Causey, but usually one of our council meetings land right around Thanksgiving, and the council votes to not have that last meeting. Right, and so then you run into possibly not having a quorum or having enough people show up. So in order to get the best possible option of getting it voted on, we're asking to have it done in October, which is early. But that just means in case a meeting gets canceled, there's not a quorum in November, that it doesn't miss all those other deadlines.
That's if it goes to February.
Pretty much,
If it goes
That's,
to.
yeah, that's.
policy needs to make a decision, but at our next council meeting.
Decision, the council must make a decision, real citizen, whether to join the RFA.
To put it out to voters to join it.
Whether to join the RFA.
They just, well, causing needs, the council needs to make a decision at their next council meeting as to whether or not they want to be part of the plan, not necessarily to vote on it, to go out to voters. But we need a definitive answer from the council as to, yes, we want to be part of the plan. I'm gonna be a stick in the mud, and I am not gonna do all of the financial background for all 3 cities. And then all of a sudden have a 3rd city say, no, I don't want to be part of it. I'm in the middle of a biennial budget and audit season. I don't have time to wait, so I need an answer before I can update my portion of the RFA plan. In order to get it on the ballot in time.
And then I go to your comment about the plan. Like Kyle said, the plan's this thick. And we're literally going through it page by page. And saying, what does the city of Oakland do? How do they react? What do they contribute? What do they get away? Provide, whatever. And that's all 3 cities. And it's broke down into organization, administration, finance, management, operation, EMS operations, fire operations. So is that plan, it's on the website?
The last written plan is July 21. It's available.
So take that as a general consensus,
July-
and now we're
should be
going
July
Cosmopolis into
Yeah.
various wherever it applies.
Well, and I will say, I am more than happy to do the plan, my personal plan for all 3 cities. I just don't wanna do the numbers. Causing insurance.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Steve.
So, Steve Davis. So, just for general information, I personally happen to throw. I think the regional fire authority is good for Grace Harbor. As a whole. I think it's good for Cosmopolis. With checks and balances in the accurate numbers for people. We have to. When we hear all these numbers, we hear that this is benefit charge, last meeting, the benefit charge is still in play.
No, the
No,
benefit
it's been
chart
off.
hasn't been off the table for a
So
long
when
time.
we bring the benefit charge back.
We don't.
We don't.
we don't-
The only way it could come back is if the plan was totally rewritten by the board, and it would have to go out to vote the
So how
people.
do we cover my house of 900 square feet versus Osmos industrial plant? What's the ratio of it?
So-
Based on tax.
That has nothing to do with the size, it's your assessed valuation of the paying.
So when the mill shut down, they heavily, the county heavily devalued that property. So we have more.
Let me get-
No, their property taxes maintain the same.
They were the same. They were.
I think that was a.
When Weyerhaeuser, the
What are you talking about, Warehouse or Cosmo?
when Weyerhaeuser shut down, they did devalue.
You're talking warehouse, not Cosmo, okay, gotcha.
And so everybody's taxes are just according to the use.
Yeah, and that would be the same as, so if, BHP or like the REG construction, when that came in, so that'll add. I mean, lots of millions, so that would slip it down a little bit. I mean, if BHP or somebody else and brought in like a massive valuation, it would slip it down the other way.
But with the benefit plan, it seems a little more equitable. But,
I do not argue with you.
Yeah.
It is, but
That's
we
why-
The problem with the benefit chart is that the feedback we received was that citizens couldn't calculate it themselves. And so there was a misconception as to how much it would cost.
A lot
There
of
was-
misinformation about it.
Yes, there was a lot of misinformation, that was relayed and there was just a huge misunderstanding and I understand where the citizens were coming from because it wasn't something that you could just calculate yourself. Citizens had to call me and I had a database, which is very similar. The county would end up with a database and they would have billed it with the property taxes, but anyways, that's null and void because it got voted down twice. And it was an uncomfortable funding mechanism to the citizens because they could self-calculate.
Prosperity, 1006 Bell Drive. Hear a lot of honesty on math, maybe it's just because I'm slow. Now, on our current property taxes, Julie, you can address this. We pay about $1.50 per thousand, is that correct for the fire coverage, is that?
Not for fire coverage, your overall property tax levy through the city of Cosmopolis is roughly $2.34 per
How much
thousand.
how
So-
much of that per thousand would be for fire?
I don't
We
have
don't-
that.
You don't have it.
No,
Okay.
I don't
We'll
have
get the per
We'll
thousand. It's just-
get that for you,
That's
but
not something that the city does.
Okay.
per
yeah, we
thousand.
don't,
Yeah, okay, and we're looking at, you said 50 cents per thousand
Yeah.
would be on that, okay,
the
So-
EMS, yes.
yeah. Plus, we jumped the service charge that we're currently paying around $9.20. Right?
Yeah,
We
six-
pay $6.75 per month on your utility
And it
bill,
Yes.
unless you're a business, Kathy.
Yeah,
Because we have a different structure
No, understood.
based
Yeah.
off,
And
you know,
so I'd pay another $18 a day.
roughly
Yeah.
19 to 20 bucks, depending on what they decide the
Sure.
amount is.
Okay.
But as far as your regular property tax levy, of that $2.34, the RFA is gonna get $1.50 per thousand out of that, and the remaining
Okay.
amount, which is, 83 cents or whatever, would come to the city. So it
So,
reduced
property
roughly the
tax-
city's property tax collected by about 2/3,
So property tax, I won't really see it yet there.
other than the 50 cents, which, roughly, that's not much.
Yeah.
In reality,
But
it's
next
the
year-
utility bill that'll get you.
Yeah,
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 it
but
goes
an
back.
extra,
Okay.
an extra
I've got
20
fair
bucks, $250 a year, I mean, for that 20 bucks a month
That's
That
what's
would
gonna-
be on residents if they voted for it.
And just for clarification, City of Hope Plain right now pays 1936 a month, Aberdeen pays,
27.96.
Yep.
so it would be an increase for everybody. It'd be a shame.
And everybody across the board would pay the same rate. So currently Aberdeen's paying a different rate, Hopeland's paying a different rate, Causy's paying a different rate. But all across the board, for the RFA, it would be the $1.50 per 1,000 that's taken away from the cities. So just the shift, you're not paying any more. All three cities, all three citizens from the cities would pay 50 cents per 1,000, the EMS levy, and everybody would pay the same ambulance availability fee. It's the same service for all three cities, so the fee structure is the same for everybody. So the reason why you guys would, or quasi citizens would see a little bit more of an increase is because you're currently not paying the rates that Holcomb and Aberdeen are. Holcomb and Aberdeen are paying more on their ambulance or their utility bill for that ambulance availability fee.
Thank you.
So the rates would be the same for all the RFA boundaries.
And Steve.
So, Steve Davis, so the reason we had paid less before is because we had a staff firehouse here that provided BLS service, and that's why our fee is less. Why is the service here and use average figure, but also for ambulance. And one thing with the fee is, it doesn't cover the service. It's only an average, it's availability, so you're still gonna be charged for the ride.
Correct.
And you're still gonna be charged for whatever the workup is, and whatever the dues on, you're gonna be paid, charged extra for that, and that's true. Aberdeen.
No. Not totally. They're Aberdeen currently, and much of Holcomb is set up. If you're a resident, we bill your insurance and write off anything left over. If you're Medicare, we can only charge Medicare and we can't balance it. So, and there's no, we're going to charge you for 5 Band-Aids and all. It's a flat fee. So,
And as it sits right now, of course, with Aberdeen covering fire as well, the city is paying the same amount that an Aberdeen resident would per unit, which calculates similar to what the budget for the fire department already was. So it's gonna be a little bit more, but I mean, it's fairly comparable for the 2736. 2796 per person on a monthly basis is fairly similar to what the budget was already. It just would be a shift. And then how the billing works as an RFA is it's kind of a undecided, and it's not that minutia has not been specifically planned out of how much they'll bill, whether they go the Aberdeen route or the Hope route. Yeah. Okay.
So is that gonna be, is that also this
Every utility count will pay the exact same. That's my understanding.
So,
So you would see a
so
or
for-
$1.
yeah, $1 like
Because you have 3 different utility.
so instead of 25, you would pay whatever is it, 20. Yeah, 20, 26,
26.54.
like, yeah, so there would be a slight increase, but there would be a much larger increase for residents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So commercial and residents is the same, unless like, for instance, so once a year in Hopeland, once a year, we reach out to like, if we have a mobile home park or, a nursing home, for instance, they charge, once a year, we reach out to them and they report to us how many beds they have. And we charge them an ambulance availability fee based upon how many beds or how many units are filled in a mobile home park. Or and then for an apartment complex, we charge a fee per apartment complex or per unit. So other than that, whether it's a commercial business or because it's an ambulance service, that the ambulance availability fee is for an ambulance, not for fire. So it's not the greater the service. I mean, it's based upon the call service for a 911, like for an ambulance service, not for a fire service. So your fee structure shouldn't necessarily increase because it's commercial versus.
And to
But
address
it's
what you
based
said,
upon
fuzzy math, you're right, it is, because in Grace Harbor, all of your EMS is fire based, which means the fire department provides EMS. And that's Monty, Elma, us, Aberdeen. And to be honest with you, we're blurring those lines, but it helps the citizens because now you're getting a firefighter paramedic that is doing 2 jobs versus a firefighter and a paramedic. So.
Tim, have you had to get here a little late, any questions, comments, and add on anything there? Oh, sorry. All right.
We've got a couple firefighters here, kind of curious. And Aberdeen and Hope. Why is it every time an ambulance leaves the door on, a fire truck leaves the door on too?
Depends on,
Manpower.
depends on the call.
That's exactly your answer to
And
my
it's
question, to be
manpower.
honest with you, manpower. So it depends on the type of call. Both of us run the same protocols for response. So if you have something like chest pain, stroke, difficulty breathing, diabetic problems, CPR, that requires more hands. And the way you get more hands is send them in the fire engine to follow up. And you don't put them all in the same ambulance because we don't have enough manpower to leave that fire engine sitting empty back here. So they follow, they help, they go back, the ambulance goes back.
It's like, just, you see one go out, you see the other go out, it's like.
You'll see like, especially in Aberdeen, you'll see, the pickup as well. That's just that one more person. And hopefully, you've got a pickup that'll follow up. And when you're doing CPR and you're putting on the pads and you're trying to defibrillate somebody and you're starting an IV, or you're putting a big needle in their bone in their leg, and you're giving them multiple medications, and someone's doing concussion, someone's putting a tube down their throat, and I can keep going on. That takes 5-6 people to do it effectively to save a life. So we have learned over many, many years how many people it usually takes for this type of call, and we just start throwing people at it.
I got one thing, the ambulance availability, did we broke that out in our. Rather than. That shows up every month on our utility bills.
Yes,
correct?
it is.
How much does that,
It's, the total per year is roughly 70,000 because that was the old contract we had with Aberdeen. So we tried, there for quite a few years, we did it on a percentage basis. We did 9% of your water and sewer. But we started over collecting. We were collecting more than what we owed to Aberdeen, so we went to the flat rate so that we could keep it in line with what the bills from Aberdeen.
Frank Chestnut again, I want to digress just a little bit. Back when the hospital districts were a brain child, that I thought. There was some real serious concern about the potential impact of the new levy on junior levies in the county. We have levy Lynn, that's 30, and in fact, Chief Leonard Johnson facilitated that meeting, did a great job of this. There may have been a risk of, say, a library district, a water district, a cemetery district losing that funding that we have secured through the ballot. Assuming the new hospital district rate of levy was high enough to impact. So the question I want to come back home, Mr. Mayor, would be, now we take a look at what this potential levy may impact in terms of junior levies throughout the county.
It would only impact the city.
Yeah,
Only the city.
yeah,
Okay.
and
what was the 40,000? In water and. What was the streets or water?
The streets.
yeah, so there's, if it came in, a percentage of our property taxes goes to streets, so there would be like a $40,000 loss to the city for streets that we would have to adjust somehow. And how that is, and whether it's coming out of another fund or what, hasn't been looked, but the impact would be onto the city rather than it wouldn't, it wouldn't cut into the school or whatever, because the property tax, that chunk is already there in the pie, whether the hospital district didn't exist. And so there was more to go around. So once the hospital district 2 came in, it added a whole other element where, in this case, the city, and primarily the 40,000 in the streets, that's the hit. Biggest take. Give or take.
Oh, man.
Yeah, no, yeah. Now we want, I mean, as much, I mean, off the wall questions, stuff that, because we're thinking of it, so we've been in planning and we've had discussions and we go to these meetings and things, but there are items that we're not thinking of, I'm sure, and so we want as much input as we can.
This has been tried twice already. And I haven't looked at it. I can prove it.
It was due to the funding mechanism and citizens not understanding how the funding mechanism worked. It was So it wasn't necessarily, I mean, it wasn't necessarily voted down because the majority voted for it. It needed a super majority. And so that's where the super majority did fail. The
think-
benefit charge is the funding mechanism that like I explained earlier, that citizens couldn't calculate it themselves, and so they were iffy about it and didn't like that type of funding mechanism. So that's
I
where,
appreciate your very quick answer before I actually finish. Because it's supposed to be on the- but thank you, that was informative. One of the things I hear on the streets, there's an ex-mayor, you can go lots of streets. Or on the phone. Anyway. This last couple of years has been tough on cities. Let's face it. You know that. Cosmopolis, the budget has been compromised to the extent we can't keep city hall open 5 days a week. The public works group, I don't know how much of their work they're getting done, I'm kind of on the loop, and I guess it's someone decision is 65%, probably. There's a number of things pending. Right now, it should be done. With work. A lot of this budget, everything we heard about was the budget, everything like everything. I'll guarantee you, this is probably not the same dinner table. Budget too. And this last couple of years, outside of, notwithstanding what happens here in the city, it's been tough. And inflation is beginning to gobble up some of the things we thought we gained. And you're gonna be asking people to buy half a big of home. I know what the figures are today. I'm not so awfully sure what I think they might be 2 years from now. And that makes me nervous. And it makes a lot of people nervous on the street, Mr. Mayor, to be perfectly candid. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm a big dude because it's all me all too long. A number of folks have reached out and said that this attempt to join an RFA may very likely be nothing more than a political expediency for administration to want a couple of problems to get away from. In terms of fire department, we had a very workable situation during volunteer proof since 1895. That's gone now. That crew saved a lot of lives. So if it hits the ballot, it hits the ballot. I'm not so awfully sure I'm convinced right now, but I understand the numbers, I understand the figures, I know what the funds are, don't get me wrong. Politically. Been tried twice, you want to try a third time?
And this is my, I don't want to interrupt you, sorry.
No.
And this is just my assumption, because it was passed, what was it, 59.5 and then 56 or 54? Whatever, I mean, the passage, if the RFA had come up the first time and it was like an 80 to 20% no, I could only assume that would be like, oh, okay, this is not right, but because it was, I mean, a majority vote each time, then they kind of looked at it and reformatted it and went back. And realistically, I mean, the costs of everything are gonna go up every single year. Costs of running public works, the cost of running streets, the cost of fire department, the cost of police, whatever. Costs are gonna continue to go up. The last thing we want to do is start, I mean, if we charged and added the cost to accurately, I mean, fully fund the public works to the capacity to get everything done and this and that and the other. That's a lot of charges and we're not doing that. And we got hit through COVID just as everything. So we completely understand. That's why this has been a tough discussion going forward. And we've been getting input from the public and that's why we have this here. Given where we've been the last 9 months or so, we just got invited, unprompted to join the planning commission. And given that we're already paying the city of Aberdeen as it is, and whether whatever happens, whether we could get, if all of you signed up to volunteer tonight and we had a full thing, we wouldn't need to do that. But if we are going into RFA time, we're gonna have to be paying the RFA the same costs as well. So the costs are gonna be there, whether or not there's somebody here or from an RFA or a local, that costs are costs that we're just trying to figure out how those are funded. That like I said, if we were invited unprompted and uninitiated and got into the process, and we are, and I've said in numerous meetings over and over again, we're not obligated at this point. We're in a fact-finding thing to see if this is something that we want to do. And again, that's why this meeting exists and this forum exists to gauge what the public thinks, that we're all citizens as well, and we're all looking at what the costs are going to be to us. And we have likely a lot of the same concerns that you all do.
And I want to address a little bit of that.
No,
So
go
you
ahead.
said, we went out for it twice and it failed. Yes, we failed. And I'll tell you, the first time we failed because we didn't quite understand that people weren't liking the extra benefit. Why did it fail? Oh, well, only missed by 14 votes. Let's go back out into again. And we'll just try harder. And so we did open houses in Aberdeen and Hopeland. We did online videos. We did public forum Zooms because people still didn't feel comfortable enough to come out in public, we assume. And so we tried to get the word out and get out, and it failed the second time. This is, again, like I said, we licked our wounds and we learned, we started asking around. It was the money factor. The asking for that big lead. And that's, okay, we gotta learn from our mistakes, and I'll take the blame. As long, Chief Hubbard's not here, but I'm sure he'd jump right on with this, is we had to learn from our mistakes. We screwed up. We overestimated our popularity, let's put it that way.
And that's why we completely redid the.
And so we redid the funding, and with that, and the situation that was going on in Cosmopolis, hey, the owner partners. Now, to be a bigger part of, I'm not sure how long you lived in Cosmopolis, I grew up in Hopeland, lived here for the last 17, 18 years, right? I haven't moved very far away. I think we can all agree, there are people in Aberdeen, people in Hopeland, people in Cosmopolis that want to maintain, people in Hopeland, people in Aberdeen, people in Cosmopolis. There is that out there. It's still there, the Myrtle Street rivalry. It's draw those lines. And those people are out there. And are we ever going to be able to, no matter how good of a product we put out, are we going to change minds? Not if that's your argument. We can't fix that. But going back to what I had said earlier, and I think Steve kind of talked off of this. We're trying to build something bigger and better to provide for our citizens. Fire service across the state specifically and the nation is losing people. People don't want to be firefighters and paramedics. Don't know why. Greatest job out there. People don't want to do it. The volunteer service across the nation is losing people. I commend Cosmopolis for having the amount of people they did for as long as they did. Cosmopolis, Montesano, Central Park. I'm sure there's some other ones around here. South Beach probably still have pretty good. I'm pointing to Daryl in the back. Sorry to point out, Daryl. Grace Harbor still has that, but if the numbers are nowhere near what they used to, people have better things to do than to go serve their community. And so we're trying to build this up, and Dave touched on it earlier, is between the two of us, we probably get 15 calls a year of someone who lives in our town. Hey, I want to be a volunteer. We don't have that here. We're hoping that this gives that avenue that this group can provide a bigger, better service for the three cities. If you haven't heard yet, the name of this that got named the first time around is called Central Grace Harbor Regional Fire Authority, of which Central Grace Harbor. And we want that big central part of Grace Harbor to be big one big happy camp. And provide a good service across the board. And we're trying to spread our wings and do that and expand. So I'm probably preaching to the choir here, and I apologize, but
Mayor, one last thing, and I'm coming from, I haven't eaten yet. I'm getting hungry. Chief Miller, you mentioned just a few moments ago that, we want to take our time to get into this thing, and we don't want to decision by tomorrow. But February may likely be tomorrow for us, and Mr. Mayor, you have other public meetings, so this is the first and only shot at this for us today.
The planning committee is still, is meeting on a monthly basis and going through that. But we have a meeting tomorrow. But as far as
that is our goal.
that's the goal, but the planning committee is still meeting and the council's still meeting and they're still planning before it comes up. We're not. Yeah, well, I mean.
It's a public meeting.
Yeah, it's a public meeting and we'll mention some updates. I mean, I'm not gonna go into minutia during the meetings, but I mean, it's gonna be a part of the council meetings. I'm not sure, like, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Just a quick response to one of the things you said, Frank, talking about public works and why we're down to 3 people. And, you know, quite honestly, we were not funding the fire department because we couldn't as good as we should have been. But as you recall, when Weyerhaeuser shut down, we lost 60% of our revenue. It only came back at about 38. So 3 guys in public works were never, those positions were never filled to backfill both the fire department and the police station. So you take that away, we're in much worse condition. So regardless of what we do, just so everybody knows, there's gonna be some costs that will have to go up even to maintain what we've got if we want to retain our other services.
and that's the kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just,
I mean,
so right, that's just, it's affecting many parts of the city to make the city function.
I mean, really, like I said, that everything that we have needs more funding. I mean, every department and everything that unless we add a tax or something or cut services somewhere and cut the costs, then the costs are gonna have to go up. It's either gonna have to maintain at a this'll do for now. I'm not anticipating Weyerhaeuser or somebody else to buy this and then double the production or another mill or something to come in, that we're gonna have to find a way to be tricky or let things slide. I mean, you look at, again, I don't think I need to speak to the choir here, that you look at the downtown and the flower beds and how out of control they got. That was because of budget cuts and priorities given. You look at some streets, you look at painting or this or that, or that everything. And you look at the cuts, I mean, the fire department that had to be made during COVID and everything. I mean, we made cuts everywhere. Some funding is coming back, but it's not just, we're not just like throwing money every which way you can. You have to, just like a household, budget as needed, and there's more money that is needed, so. Feeling that.
Linda Stringer, first off, I want to thank the fireman and Corey. I was at the last meeting we presented. My husband was asking me lots of questions. And I said, well, short version of it. And listen. And I want people to be, I want you to know I said thank you. Cosmopolis has an amazing service in the community about the community. But sadly, that's not the case. And a lot of things have changed in this community and they need to be addressed. And the service that the citizens deserve from the community, which is what you're talking. Yeah, we're gonna pay a little bit more, we're paying a little bit more for everything. But we deserve to have the best service. I don't wanna be calling 911 for my husband and you're out and someone can't be there, or I don't know how to tell me medic. I want the best service. This is going to be my community. And I appreciate you going back, yes, quite a bit down. But I appreciate the fact that you went back to the drawing board. What it says to me is that you believe in it. I'm from Oakland, grew up there most of my life, been here, hometown Oakland. I know Myrtle Street, being Cosmopolis. I looked at the community, great for what is the best. And I believe this is truly. And I think moving forward, that you went back to the drawing board, you looked at what you did wrong, and you listening to the people. And that's what needs to happen. That hasn't happened, I think, for a long time in our community. But you are doing that. You're doing the research, and I want to thank you. Thank you for doing it. And listening to our concerns.
Chief. What was the big budget you guys threw up, the big number that scared everybody?
I can't even do that math, but
So I think what it was, honestly, was there was some examples thrown out of, okay, if your house is this many square feet, you would expect to pay something all around this, and your benefit charge would be somewhere around here. we threw out a whole bunch of examples. And
The numbers that people grabbed were like a 9,000.
yeah, the,
Or,
worst
uh,
case scenario.
Or a commercial property to where it's like a 13 to 20,000 square foot. So pretty much it was the benefit charge. People couldn't self-calculate. And then based upon information that was put out and misunderstood, it was, so it, again, it was the benefit charge. And so it was based upon the square footage of your home, not your assessed value. And so, which if the, so it was based upon like fire service. So for instance, the bigger the structure, the bigger the fire, correct? So the bigger the structure, the bigger the benefit charge. And again, it was based upon square footage, so people couldn't necessarily, they didn't understand the funding mechanism, and it was, that was the issue.
Well, yeah, and again, they took that example of the largest,
And the people
example.
panicked, they saw that,
Yeah.
they only saw the largest home, and they panicked.
And also, I want to know this is, where's my bonus?
Yeah.
Because my wife actually,
Also getting
Yeah.
massive bonus.
I was getting a big bonus.
Not
Yeah.
raised by any.
My wife was.
Yeah. Had a couple relatives and they were just like, big numbers were thrown at them after the property tax was being done up. And even here, saying, okay, $1.50. Okay, if that was gonna be an additional to what it was gonna be here even, my home, that's an extra $500 a year. But to understand that that $1.50 comes out of the city, that's already out of our taxes, we're only looking at maybe 50 cents to look at. It's a whole lot of different things where people have to understand when this thing does go out, that it's not that $1.50, maybe 50 cents. That can make a lot of difference.
But with that, we want to be very transparent in where that money's coming from. Because again, we were gonna get bonuses and brand new flashy cars and all these new grades, but so we want to be very open and honest and transparent about. This is where the money is coming. And that benefit charge people did.
And that was the same thing that we heard when the hospital district was being formed and elsewhere, that it's one of those, people don't dive into how your assessed value and how those numbers, like, that's not something that people really get into and want to understand more. And so it's a difficult, and that was the conversations we heard from the city and myself outside the city in my normal work, that there was a lot of confusion of what it meant, and again, saw some numbers and then just assumed the worst. But Terry,
And if anyone, I mean, please contact me if anybody wants me to give them an estimate.
I can do that as well.
I am more than happy, to write it up. I'll get it to you within a couple minutes, so, it's very easy to do. I'm more than happy to calculate. Again, it's a rough estimate, but I,
Hey, I've got a devil's advocate question. Let's say this thing passes. We've got a beautiful fire hall here and a brand new fire truck sitting out there. What's that worth?
oh, so you weren't good. at the beginning.
oh,
Did that already get?
Yes.
what is the word, the fire station is technically ours. They would use it. We would charge like $1 a year. Everything that's in the fire department, minus the new truck, would just become part of the RFA. The truck we would still have to pay for, because that was paid for the city, not through a bond or something like that. And so,
Is this station going to be used?
yes, I am.
Yes.
Yes, the current, and we had talked about this a little earlier, but briefly, the current planning process will, the idea is that this would be, what is the?
So what we're looking at is like a training
Resident.
station, training development, and a resident program. So I'm not sure if
Using those
people are familiar with the resident program. I did that when I first started out in the career. And you get some young gung ho, willing to do anything for next to nothing person like I was. And you move them into your station, you provide a bed, you provide, not food, you provide water, electricity, a shower. And they have to hit a certain amount of your calls. I had to hit 85, 90% of the calls that happened in my fire station. And I had to hit 95% of the, somewhere in there, maybe I remember, of training that they had. My payback is I was gonna respond to 80% of the calls that came out of my station. So our goal, our thought process is build the volunteer program up, get some more numbers in by recruiting 3 citywide versus 1 city, or did you guys go outside the city? Before? No, go outside the city. Bring them in, volunteers, and then you can do a resident where they actually live, or you can pull shifts. And then that becomes a training / hiring pipeline for us to get local people, because I'll tell you, it is hard for us to hire people who want to live in Grace Harbor. I will say right now, out of my 21, I've got almost 10 that live at least an hour away.
My last 3 I hired live north of Everett and commute. I don't expect them to stick around.
There's a lot of hands up.
Daryl, I'm assuming it seems like you have something to add.
My name is Darrell. I have in the staffing model, I apologize, that's kind of late. Is there a career guidance for the areas of the house, residents, on the field, and some status having discussed?
Under current manpower, just in what we have, they will be oversaw by the daily battalion chief that's on duty, that's stationed out of the Japanese headquarters. As time goes on, there has been one of the first positions we want to fill is a MSO training. I'm lumping them in just to give them a name, MSO, medical safety officer training position. And our thought is put that person over here. And they volunteer services would also fall under that. That's more manpower. It's gonna take us a while to get there.
Yeah, as the idea is, as the RFA matures and is able to grow, that we could fill these other positions, and more of a true oversight and having somebody here more on a daily basis to help kind of run and guide that program, to help administer it. So
Until that time comes, we're gonna have to create a training program where either the volunteers are here and go to one of the other stations, or we come here. And we do a rotation with our people and come here and train as a bigger group.
I think what I'm looking for is increased value. Now, what the future may contain, and knowing that I have a volunteer and a career component of my organization, I find great value in volunteer work. It's wrong, that's not necessarily reliable. So I'm trying to find ways to find value to the city of Cosmopolis, like, an operations plan. But sometimes it's not always about how much you're spending, sometimes the value is there as well. Even though it's trying to find value. Since I'm still on the floor again, another question. Has there been any discussion about what the insurance rating may change by the RFA jumping on board with the central, or Cosmopolis jumping on board with the central rating on RFA? Eventually, it may not be done any numbers yet.
So-
fire insurance rating has dropped, what might that change?
Yeah, so my gut feeling tells me that you will probably see some sort of improvement in the rating. But that's just my gut feeling. I don't know what the rating bureau's report for Cosmopolis looks like. When the rating bureau comes in to do the insurance, it's not just. There's so many different things they look at. They look at the fire department and the staffing, the apparatus, the training. There's a whole litany of things they go through.
It would
Look
be
at the
astonishing
city-
part that
We're
6,
They
so.
look at the city's water supply. They actually look at the dispatch center and how you're dispatched and how fast they turn calls around. They look at your response time. So all those things get thrown into a blender and they come out with a score. When you look at the report, they do tell you, okay, you're this many points in this area, this many points in that area, and you kind of gauge where you can improve and where you might not improve. And is that enough to, increase your rating or not? So my gut tells me, yeah, just by some of the ancillary things that are going to happen, there's going to be improvements. Where that puts the score, I don't know. And it all depends on what, evaluator you get to.
Terry, you had a question a bit ago,
I
sorry.
think the answer.
Okay.
My question was, what's in it for you to take on positive and your project? But I think
My goal is, since I live up there, I want to have my office down here so I can walk. That's my overall plan. That might take a little while, but that's my overall, I'm kidding.
So I.
What's in it for me is the bigger growth potential, the bigger opportunities that we can provide for our citizens and our people. Again, we have people that don't live here that work for both of us. It's hard to get people that want to live down here.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you find the random person like, oh, perfect, I like small towns, I'll move down there. I haven't had that in over 10 years where somebody moved down here as a result of being hired by me. I'm assuming you're probably about the same.
Sounds awful.
So we're really hoping and looking to trying to recruit some younger, fresh blood. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Montesano High School and the fire department, but they are doing an excellent job up there of taking their high school and they have a class and they go down to the fire station and they learn fire skills and they learn basic medical response skills. And it's part of the high school. It's like a skills class. It's CTE class. And it's a great program and they've got a great backbone of volunteers. They've always had volunteers, but they're helping build that by teaching their high school kids this. In Hoquiam, one of my captains started to try to do that with the Hoquiam High School. And I mean, we had paperwork down there and then COVID hit. Now kids, nobody can come in our station and the kids are all at home. And so we are very slowly trying to bring that back up. This gives us a conduit or an avenue. Let's try to build something like that back up. And get more local youth involved into the process.
This conversation, I mean, really for the entire Central Grace Harbor RFA is much more than how does this help Oakland? How does this help Causey? How does this help Aberdeen? I mean, this is something that if it came in, yes, there would be additional cost, but this would be a benefit to the entire area. And so it's similar to if we all had the same, whatever, water department, streets, whatever, it would be a benefit to everybody to have that cooperation. But it does come with an additional cost.
But we don't have time to get that study, or you already have it.
We do not have the study.
Well,
Yeah.
you have time to get it. The push is, or I guess our push is we've been working on this for 4 years and we honestly believe, I'll be honest with you, I had people, I think Dave's the same way, that said, I'm just staying to make sure this RFA goes through and if it doesn't, I'm out of here. I want to work for a bigger department that has more opportunities, more promotional possibilities, a bigger department. And so we actually have people who are just hanging on, waiting to hear about this, which if we have people leave, could devastate, right? It's just that we're gonna drop down a lot of people. So that's one of our questions. We already are operating at a much higher level. If you guys aren't familiar, Dave is the city of Hoquiam Fire Marshal. I mean, we have integrated our fire departments like this. He comes over to my officer meetings, I go to his officer meetings. Daily, we're talking. We're starting to blend the two of us. Our push is to get this going. Cosmopolis can choose not to do this, and we would love to have Cosmopolis in, but they can choose not to do this now. And then you all could vote on it 2 years from now, once the study is done. Problem with that is with the way laws and governance structures are built up, Cosmopolis would not have a voting member on the commissioner board. With this, Cosmopolis solved a little bit of a problem for us, is we were gonna have one citizen from Hoquiam, one citizen from Aberdeen, and then an at-large. Well, you kind of took that at-large and became that third person because you need a odd number, right? So that kind of, it fit.
And that would be the same, I mean, down the line, let's say the RFA passes and it were the 3 cities. If Central Park wanted to join, or Fire 7 or Fire 10 or wherever, they wouldn't just come in and the board would just get larger. They would lose out on that opportunity as well.
Also late for the speed.
Maybe 2 or 3 years later. I'm gonna take
That's a
that
good
as a note.
Oh, Cheryl, sorry.
Sure.
the RFA, if it goes through, it would be considered, the city would consider a, professional or not a volunteer department any longer.
No, it
No.
would,
It would be,
it would be part of the regional fire.
so it would be
So-
a combination.
So when you are a volunteer fire department in a city, your fire rating is only so good, you can't get any higher. But with the RFA, it could actually reduce people's homeowners insurance, the fire insurance on their home.
I would be astonished if it didn't go down.
So,
So just so.
Like,
so
what's
everybody knows-
happening, what's happening in Hokum?
No, that's.
Five.
So,
So, I mean, it's, they wouldn't go like six.
we were rated at a 4.89, so just shy of a 5, right? Aberdeen was at 4.39 or something like that. Because we've integrated so much together and now NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, OSHA, WISHA, the rating bureau, there's all these people that come down and look at us, L&I. With what we've implemented already in Aberdeen and Oakland, we are able to provide 13 firefighters on a house fire as an initial attack. And NFPA says you should have 15. Well, when Dave and I show up, we're 14 and 15. Now they're saying, oh, look, you guys have a real fire department that can
Yes.
adequately staff and fight a fire the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
That's gonna transfer over to here.
That's what I was getting at. Like I said, volunteer fire department is only rating, I think a 6 is the highest they can ever rate. With a full volunteer staff. But with this, the rate can go down. You can guarantee it, but they can go down, and which does reflect in your homeowner's insurance. So.
And the first people to see that are commercial. Not that I'm looking at anybody.
Steve?
Steve is, I agree with Vern exactly, the best you can get is a 6 in volunteers, and working with the rating bureau over the years. So you get paid staff, almost anything, you can drop in. So for a volunteer fire department, to have a rating of 6, we were the best we could possibly be. That's part of the reason we had to buy new pieces of apparatus, just to keep that 6. We're not going to 7. With the age of part of the process. Continue on, so we have $500,000 left in the fire. And 400.
We have 380,000, I think. left.
$44,000 in 11 years.
Right, but that's, interest too, in that $44,000 per year. It's not just straight principal. In fact, I have in my office, I give you the amortization.
400, yeah.
And the RFA doesn't take that on.
Right.
So it's paid. Who takes care of the maintenance on the vehicle? And the same thing with the building. With this building, so the maintenance goes, then what about the third maintenance things? That goes into the RFA.
You'll have to fix it, we find it. We'll have to fix it.
It was just the same things that would happen here would just be a different entity that would do it. So, I mean, so Matt might be changing the lights, or so to speak.
So that said, the maintenance goes along with.
Yeah.
Yes. So we approved the new police station and the city hall. What part of that money would go into the fire RFA?
None of that money,
In our, when we voted on that,
that
we
bond,
talked about having. Things that need to happen, in the fire department, doors need to be replaced and things like that.
that was not included in the bond. That was the $3 million for that bond was strictly for the new facility for the fire, or police and city hall.
So the sheet that we put out when we voted on it said that the current needs of the fire station that were part of that. And we said the structure of the sub four needs a major retrofit, the electric system. Truck bay doors need to be replaced. And the outdated HVAC system, all that.
Which,
That wire that you put out.
Yeah, we asked for that list of those priorities, but never did receive it. So that wasn't included in the original bond work, the bond language.
So that might have been in the planning. I don't know.
That was the initial planning.
Yeah, it's
Is
like-
that above and beyond?
Oh. Yeah.
I don't want to
Good.
talk about new. Yeah, rather than training.
Not initially, I mean, as we grow, we'd love to, but we just don't have the manpower to spread them back out yet. But that's kind of where we want to boost the volunteers back up to where it was and create the in-house people. We just don't have the paid people to do it.
And part of that initially is because the planning and the
Yeah, so let me kind of get to the first part of that, the idea of putting in paid staff here, and this is a discussion that I know we've had here. So speaking from the Aberdeen side of things, even like today, we've talked about we need a new Southside Fire Station. Maybe, do we move into here? There's, just conversations. And while that's a very attractive option for us, because it saves us from having to build a new station, maybe we can move in here and utilize this. Logistically speaking, it doesn't work for where the call volumes are. When you look at where you want to put your manpower, you've got to really look at where's the business. And with the way that Southside is and Causey is situated, you got to come off the bridge and you got the fork in the road. Most of the action's on this side rather than this side. So we really need to be able to centralize our staffs to where they're closer to the most business, so to speak. This within the RFA could be a viable option for staffing if Huntley's punched through. Because then it helps shorten up our response. If by putting our paid staff this far south, without Huntley being punched through, logistically and operationally, it doesn't make sense. Because you're just taking them farther away from where they need to be. So, and with the volunteer staff being here and who's responding, is you would have the volunteer staff here responding with that automatic response from Aberdeen. And the EMS would be very similar to what you're used to. The fire is, I think, where you're going to see more bang for your buck. Is historically, Cosmopolis would have a fire, they would respond. We're in Aberdeen just sitting there, we're not part of that response pack. But with the RFA, you're going to get a response from here, and then you're going to get that 13, 14 people from Aberdeen coming as well. So you're going to get a much more robust initial response to those types of things.
And part of it is, again, that they've done 4 years of planning of what kind of the structure is and who's going to be at what station. And Cosmopolis has entered the conversation 2 months ago. So still kind of building what the initial plan versus what the future plan could be.
Great work. We're gonna staff our station, with volunteers. And we have a damn good station, a good set of volunteers. We got all our babies kind of be in one. So, what are we paying?
Do you want to answer that? You want me to answer that, or? So what you're gaining is like what we said, if you have a structure fire, you're gonna end up with 13 plus people. We're trying to build a volunteer corps that is here back up again. And we're trying to even get more that is here, trying to get people more staff in here. You're gonna get a more direct response to ALS or the BLS. Because you always had, sometimes it may have been a little bit delayed because it might have been a fall victim that Steve was going to go through by himself, and he realized when he got there, oh, it's not a fall victim, it's a heart attack. Right? It's gonna be more of a seamless approach. Instead of Steve having to get on the radio, call for Aberdeen gets toned down, it's all coming in. We're going to try, on a, probably a side you wouldn't even see is the fire marshal. So with that, offering public education, my kids, well, they were up here for many years, people in the Causey. You always had a good public outreach. We're gonna continue that or bring that back. You have a fire marshal that's gonna give you plan review, building inspections, code enforcement.
Fire code enforcement.
Fire code enforcement, that type of stuff. And again, the fire rating, hopefully, I don't know why it wouldn't go up, because your response package is now this big.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Improved, yeah.
Up in value.
Code enforcement, fees, citizens charge, but not.
I don't know how Causey is set up for that, but I know the city of Aberdeen and hoping it's built into the building permit fee. And we don't charge extra for,
Personnel is there, Lindsay is the. city charge.
no, we don't. So I honestly, I'm the fire marshal. I do the time. I don't charge anything extra. It's based on the permit fee for that.
Correct.
And the
City
inspections,
selects a fee for the citizens.
just as Causey collects a fee for theirs, for a building permit review for whatever it
It's
is.
included in the building permit, though, it's not
Yeah.
a separate fee.
It's not a separate fee.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I see what
Yes,
you're saying.
yes, that
Okay,
portion.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So. Like, could be, the question really what we have in front of us is, what are our options? What are our options in the city currently? For our fire. I wonder why we don't see this with police departments, why we don't see a regional police authority, maybe that's coming down the road.
I don't think it's not.
So.
Isn't legal yet though? It's in discussion, but it's not legally available.
Those are being, because the concept really doesn't make sense.
It's gonna come sooner than later.
Question is, what is causing options really? What do we have? What are the options the council is considering today? What are the options?
So I believe that's why the city was looking at the ESCI study.
Yeah,
to break
looking
out
at-
those options. Granted, the study is gonna tell you what the city should do, it would just break out the different options that are available.
I think the reason we don't, we can actually bring.
Honestly, you could look at our plan. that
Yeah,
we
and
had.
it's similar discussion we had for years, when we were having pre-COVID of whether RFA district or find some funding and increase funding here. I mean, those are
So the first
other
option
options. But
really-
tonight, we're talking RFA though, specifically RFA. I mean, I don't want to divert too much, but
so the RFA is one option out of town. That.
Well,
should not be on
I
the
mean,
Yeah,
so do
yeah.
you stay this, honestly, do you stay the same, do you from the fire district? Do you just, I mean, so you do actually recreate your fire or your volunteer fire department? Do you join the RFA?
or do we just contract?
Yeah, which
Absolutely.
would be the same.
Yeah,
as you're
Yeah,
doing
so
now.
I-
saying, which is basically.
Yeah.
Paid with furnace, and we don't have anybody in the
Yeah.
city. and
So,
Yeah.
in all reality, those are your options.
It is. So that's the point.
So it's, I mean, if we went to a fire district, it would be a taxing district.
Yeah, so
that
there
would- I
is
mean,
a-
depending on the cost, so if we,
And everybody's
Yeah.
kind of moving away from fire districts, it's not necessarily, the funding isn't as reliable as the fire authority. Fire authorities, it seems to be a greater area of coverage, so they're more sustainable versus these little tiny fire districts. Which is, we can see in our area, there are several fire districts that are not thriving right now. You can see the struggle.
Daryl has a hand up,
Oh.
you might have something.
Sorry.
I believe a municipal fire district certainly is an option, but there's still here with the individual Cosmopolis standing alone without having the, and so your tax base can be generated is based on tax base within your city that you turn into a district. So you don't necessarily gain the, cost savings of not creating duplication of company. Because you'll still need a printer, and a shredder, and a
Yeah.
whatever, for Cosmopolis, where maybe hopefully on the Academy or RFA, they have that when you share resources. If you decide to stay by yourself, you lose that ability to have cost avoidance. You're still gonna have to fund them.
So
and
there is a fire municipality option, however, it's never been done, so there's no guidelines, nothing.
and when we're looking at, I mean, if we just said, oh, we're gonna become, let's say, a district, it was just us, so we're taxing just Cosmopolis residents. There's only so much pool. Again, the Warehouser's not gonna come back in and double the size that if we went to an RFA, then we are sharing costs and benefits and staffing and everything with Aberdeen and Hopeland as well, so. Similar to taxes going up, yeah, that we're paying for I-5 and different things, but we're gonna have more return than our putting out, so it's the benefit. If we went to a district or funded it ourselves, we have our pie is much smaller than what the RFA pie could be.
And I will say, so I've looked at the numbers for Aberdeen, Copeland, Causey. Revenue wise, Cosmopolis, and I don't mean, I mean this in a way as in, we really do care about the citizens and the area as a greater whole. Causey doesn't necessarily, I mean, you guys are tiny, you're very small, so is Hopeland, but you guys are even small compared to Hopeland. You guys actually, there's not a lot of revenue being brought in property tax wise or anything, so. In all reality, Causey is earning a big bang for its buck in getting the services from Aberdeen and Copeland. So just, know that,
We couldn't pay for that type
Yes.
of service
thank you,
ourselves
yeah,
without,
without joining.
without joining the RFA or taking on costs, it would be well more than what the RFA
Thank you.
would be.
Okay, along with that bang for your buck, I'm on the same page as Joe is. It makes it, and this is just me thinking out loud. It would make no sense to me. That if you're an RFA to go build a new building in Aberdeen, literally 3 minutes down the road when you have one sitting right
Well, so I
here.
think that-
Currently, your truck at Aberdeen and the Southside station sits out in the rain, the snow and everything. You've got a station fully functional right here. How many millions would it cost to replace this today?
Well, our Southside Station project is in the neighborhood of 20 million.
Yeah, so.
And the city,
So
the city of Aberdeen has to build a new station, RFA or not, and that's the city, that's
So
the city, that's the city. The city.
That's
Yeah.
part of
That's how
the,
it's set up right now.
so part of the whole RFA plan and the purpose for the facilities to stay with the cities is because Aberdeen needs to figure out what they're gonna do with their facilities, and Aberdeen doesn't wanna put that on on Hopeland or Causey, if Causey decides to join in, that's Aberdeen's ordeal. Whether or not the RFA uses this facility and Huntley gets, punched through, right, that's the name of that street.
Yeah.
So, that's up to the RFA and the chief and whatever, when the RFA is formed. That definitely is a possibility, or, they could go.
Put it back on the people though. There's people in this audience that would like to know. And Joe said it. Why would you not man this? These are things you can
So-
either gain the crowd's
Yeah.
trust and say, yeah, we're gonna
Well,
man
and
this
I
thing.
think, just to reiterate, and maybe I didn't say it well enough, is I would love to take advantage of this and move into it today if I could from Aberdeen, but logistically for where my call volume is, it doesn't make sense.
It's,
Until Huntley is punched through, then that's a game changer. Then we can actually take a hard look and say, yeah, that those response times to that side of the 105, the Boone Street side of the south side are palpable.
and
For
that's,
now, we're gonna have to go all the way up and around to get there, so operationally, we have to have that Huntley done. And
What's, I guess I'm gonna ask, you get in that truck, you put your foot to the floor with your lights on, how far is it from this station to the south side station?
oh, I can't tell you time.
Well, give it
2 minutes.
But yeah.
Yeah.
2 minutes, because you could drive like your hair's on fire.
but that's,
Okay,
that's
so-
a rating.
so give me them all.
Maybe.
Give me
Yeah.
them all.
That's
Give me
a
out-
rating issue too.
Yeah.
It's a distance
Response
from,
time.
so if something happened at, Westport Highway or the college or whatever, because they have to go up and around rather than straight, it adds a certain amount of time based on, it's not of how fast could you go, like physically, that there's a difference, if Huntley or one other road, that's the one that's been discussed. Because you have to go up so far
You
and
can
then
still-
cut across, it adds, and it is like a minute or two, there's a rating, maybe Daryl, you might know.
Well, I guess my question, Chief, is
Oh.
is it a
does it meet that 5 mile requirement, the road mile, or specifically based on issues on response time?
I'm looking at response time.
Because if you were to take that travel route, it's the closest route to the tip of the city, Cosmopolis heading south, or wherever direction you're going from this station, is it greater than 5 miles? Is it going to maintain that, insurance rating that way, or you're talking about? response time?
Yeah, no, I'm looking strictly at response times. So,
For each person here, as a citizen of Cosmopolis, it would give me a lot of, it would give me some warm fuzzy feelings to have a staff station in my community versus.
yeah,
Could happen.
So-
Yeah. And that could happen down the line. And it's like, and Frank can attest too, the discussion of Huntley coming through has been brought up for how many decades, probably. And there hasn't been a whole lot of this like need or want or movement for it, and some pushback. With this kind of discussion, and if that was the case, then I mean, there's so many issues, not saying that Huntley could go through the many in the room know the issues with that area in between us and South Aberdeen, but it's a discussion. So, and again, like I said, we're coming in 2 months in that we've just started getting maybe a battalion chief on staff at times, and then as things go, how things change. It's not if we came in, you would never have anybody, you would only have like one 17-year-old kid here, and that's it. Like, that's
18.
not 18. So, I mean, it would grow as it goes. That's where the discussion is now,
Yeah.
possibility.
I just want
It could grow, it could grow or not. That's where I'm
Correct.
at is,
Yeah, we don't
I'm not
Yeah.
gonna sell somebody a bunch of crap that, oh, this could grow. Well, put it out there now, if it's going to or not. If it's not gonna, don't sugarcoat it, just say what it is. So if it's going to, I think we owe it to them to tell them, this is our plan
No, I.
now. And we're gonna stick to it, or no, we're not gonna stick to it.
We're
just gonna
still building the
willy-nilly
plan.
this thing.
We're still
So
building
that's-
the plan. That's the plan as it sits.
So as the plan sits right now, so there's like, for instance, what Chief Miller brought up earlier is that the study that both cities had done together, it said that we need more manpower. So when we put out the plan, there were several options. There was adding no staff, adding 3 staff, and adding 7 staff members. So I think a big piece of the puzzle is whether or not if we add additional staff or not, which if we add additional staff, that puts more costs on the citizens. And so, but the more staff you have, the more growth opportunity there is to expand elsewhere as well. So that's,
So that 26
and this
went to
cost right
30.
now that I gave, so for instance, so the cost I gave for the 2654, that was with no additional staff added. At the last RFA meeting, we gave very rough estimates, and it pretty much jumped up. It was like $3 a month if we were to add 3 additional staff, and then if we went up to 7, I think it jumped up to like $35 a month or something like that, 33, 35. So that's something to consider as well. I mean, again, it did get voted down twice, so we were trying to look at a cost savings. But with that said, it's based upon the RFA committee and what the councils approve as to what they want in that plan. If they want the additional staff members, then we can add the additional staff members in. So the RFA committee has to approve it, and so does each council.
Does anybody have any feel for how long it would be between approval of the RFA and expansion of staff?
I mean,
Month, a year?
wait, what do you mean? Like, so if it let's say it got approved in February, RFA would start January 1, 24. So, I mean,
Didn't you guys,
There's-
you guys
there-
had a gut plan as to how?
there was a
Yeah.
very rough, like, if everything kind of fell into place, that we would start seeing people here and growth.
Regardless of the number they foresee increasing in by House, even if it was 3/6 of the Senate. House and with approval.
A lot depends on
Hire more guys.
the funding, what the funding
It would
looks
just,
like.
it would be look at the funding and
So if it got approved with the 7 extra people, how soon would the 7 extra people be on?
Oh,
I believe, yeah, go ahead.
so if that was, we'd have to wait 1 year because you collect taxes a year after.
Yeah.
So it would take that 1 year until you even start collecting taxes. With that, in the plan, it specifies that the 3 city, or in this case, the 3 cities, whatever you know, when, help fund that department for that 1 year, because they have no money, literally no money. So it would take that full year, and then, to be honest with you, probably another year to make sure that those stabilize. So that you can see at least 2 years worth, because what if something happened and the rates were way up here, or way down?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's
and
not
so probably, I would say a minimum of 2 years. Probably,
Yeah.
just so you can get a feel for a baseline.
Growing pains.
I do know,
I'll be aggressive year and a half.
What's that?
I'll be aggressive year. and a half.
Yeah.
I do, the, one position, so that's, the one position will be added right away. That was,
The MSO.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
MSO.
MSO position. And then from there, when Chief Hubbard was here, I believe he wanted them to trickle in a little at a time, so almost add 2 at a time from there.
Really quick, I just want to get back to just the response time.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I have the number right, but yeah, NFPA is 4 minutes for your first responding engine to arrive on scene of what they would call a moderate risk fire, which is a typical house fire. So 4 minutes is the response. So that's where my head is at when I'm looking at workstations and staffing.
It takes me, I mean, just for a frame of reference, from my house to my work, it's 6 minutes. Yeah. And that's big. Yeah, that's what, that's what, that's what Google tells me when it says like, oh, you're 6 minutes from home. So, I mean, that's what attracts me on that route every day. So, if that's.
And there's obviously more work that we need to put in to see what would happen. To be honest with you, it's been moving relatively quickly, and Huntley's always been the answer. And apparently it's been talked about for years.
There's been a
This
number of
may or may
engineers
not
and cities.
push.
and It's never been to a point to where there's a lot of like. Back of a meeting, like, hey, you ever thought about this type of thing? Or
Right.
back of another meeting talking about the issues with it and the different things, but it's never gone to, I don't know if you ever had any like pen to paper actual discussions about it. It's always been yeah, it's like waiting and talking to somebody. So that hasn't been that's not any sort of official. Steve, yeah.
So the loss to the city, if we approve the RFA, the only loss, tax loss they're looking at is $40,000 to streets.
No, the
Yeah.
city, so like for this year, we stand to collect $453,000 in property tax. So if the RFA were in effect right now, the RFA would get $290,000 out of that 453. So we would be left with roughly $162,000.
So we get 250 budget in the fire department anyway.
Because we also collect B&O taxes, we collect sales taxes. The fire department isn't just funded out of property taxes.
It's just how the junior taxing district system.
They would
the
have to be
city
adjusted.
Or the RFA. Takes $1.50 away
So,
from the city.
so we know when we get $40,000 loss. to
Yes.
streets, we don't know exactly what the rest of the number.
Could you repeat that, Darren?
Sorry,
Too many people talking.
so you said earlier that you expect a $40,000 loss and that would go to the streets.
Right, because when we collect property taxes, 10% of the property taxes we collect goes into the street fund. So if we collect less property tax, there's less going into streets.
So $40,000 and then $44,000 a year for the fire truck installation.
Well, and for the fire truck, we partially pay for that for utility taxes. If you remember back when we were looking at getting the fire truck, when Chief Bridges was here, we added 2.5% to our utility tax to help pay for that,
So we're.
which is roughly $22,000 a year.
$60,000 a year, we gotta make up someplace.
Well, for the fire truck itself, the city's general fund is already paying the
Yeah.
extra $22,000.
That's not a property tax
That's not a property tax loss. It's the street fund. We're gonna have to figure out how to put those monies in there. Because street taxes themselves, the fuel taxes aren't even enough to cover. We get very little in that. So that's the one area we have to really look at.
And so the last council meeting, you talked about substantial increase from average for water. Fees. We got substantial increases done. Put this into play and we get it and it's going on in February and it passes, everything, we're still looking at roughly 2 years for it to be in full effect, 1.5 years before it really ramps up. So Cosby right now, it seems to me, the best option for Cosby is to get a full house of volunteers back in here as quickly as possible. To be able to stem that tide and start training that and both them like we used to before. And put that together to get us through the next 2 years.
That's kind of, as far as the recruitment, that's been our thought process is, yes, it wouldn't take effect till 24, 23, 24. But in that meantime, continue to recruit volunteers and bring everybody up and get them trained. And us expanding, even though we're not one yet, start operating.
Like you hopefully did.
Like we're doing now, and we're finding what little bugs we can find. Hey, look, it didn't, when we got hurt, we found the bugs. Just work
And
everything.
we actually built a timeline for our training based on approval of RFA to the RFA. Actually starting up business of joint training to get each side up to speed on apparatus and aligning policies and you name it, we had that kind of framework built in anticipation of day one, we're race ready.
So the other question I have is physically the size, physically the map. Is the trailer court in? They are, that belongs to the city and how far
Yes.
that goes? Golf course, there's not, it's the portion.
Just a very corner of it, yeah.
Did we get the house?
And then we're talking about annexations before, we still plan on trying to annex in the truck stop area of the Cosmo.
Cosmo at this point, put that on hold there.
Do they have a choice if we decide that's what we need?
If we do it by assessed valuation, then it would be tough with the surrounding properties to get them in really, really close. Depends where the golf course would come in on assessed value. And the golf course, there's I think Frank left. There's one legal owner. Okay, so we have one legal owner that was part of the old group. Is that the old Sterling group? Is that correct? Okay. But I thought there was just one of that group that was listed as the owner now. We've had trouble. Okay.
Well, because of the Cosmo adjustment and everything, like hasn't really been discussed for a while.
And with Cosmo, the biggest issue has been from day one that, they've always said, we're not for sale, but we would sell if one of our customers or somebody comes up and offers us a good fair price.
Doesn't it make sense to try to get all that inclusive?
Oh, we'd love to have, it. You bet.
So it sounds like we know a lot of homework.
Yeah, we have all the paperwork done as far as is from 2018, just redoing the numbers. And then, yeah, that would help.
That would help the finance director, and we're small, we did a little bit more than.
And on that annexation, so if the cities grow, the RFA automatically grows with it. So after the fact, if the city of Cosmopolis or any of the cities annexed property, let's say, for example, city of Aberdeen annexes all of Junction City, that automatically becomes part of the RFA. Yeah. So,
fire 10.
But so the next question is, with the benefit charge, can you only charge commercial buildings?
There's no benefit.
We're not, there is no benefit for work.
No, it was
No,
across
No,
the board.
everybody,
The way that it was different for residential versus commercial or industrial was they had a factor. So a residential house was a factor of 1. And I don't recall what the different ones were, but as you
mobile
got
home was like
bigger,
a point.
but if you got to a large industrial, the factor could be a 3 that you're multiplying by. So
So the only other problem I got is, there's a huge disparity in our communication. And there is, and it's from our city to citizens, and it's from the RFA to the groups. These are public meetings, and they should be written up and available as quickly as possible after meetings, so that people can review the processes that's going on. I try to stay in touch with the RFA meetings when they are. I don't see them posted. I'd like to see the minutes for the audio recordings from the previous minutes. From previous meeting, I think you've got 4 so far, technically since positive.
Two. Probably three.
So part of it is, I'm gonna, try to improve that information stream. Have the meeting, and Skype up as quickly as possible, make those recordings available. We got new software here in the city, that's easier to upload, things like that. So our minutes should be available sooner.
So the minutes weren't approved at the last meeting, so they will be at this next meeting.
Are still there.
So yeah, I have the audio.
So the audio recordings will be released quickly and easily, and minutes can be released in draft one.
Yeah, do you want to type them up?
She is typing.
No, honestly, it's the time, so for instance, at this next meeting, the 2 minutes or the 2 previous meetings, the minutes will be approved. The last meeting honestly caught up to me, and it's my fault they didn't get done and submitted to the committee. I ran out of time, so. But typically we don't release minutes until they are approved by the committee.
The audio recordings will be available. Right.
I mean, they're available if you ask them for the public record. Yes, I will get them.
So we all have the same software that can be posted right onto the website very quickly and easily.
Well,
We don't have.
yeah,
the
we
They
same
don't have
we
the
don't
same
have the same
software that
software.
we do.
Yeah, it's not,
For the RFA meetings, it was on there.
not for, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I know the RFA meetings was posted on the RFA website.
Aberdeen, I don't know anything about the Aberdeen. website.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can ask, I know who does them at Aberdeen, I can ask.
Yeah, I'm just, that's the one thing that I hear from a lot of people is where's the information? And then they say, well, you don't go to the website and here, it's not there.
Okay,
Same thing, we are, our planning commission meetings. That was posted on there, the audio portion, the minutes weren't, were taken, but in the council meetings, those seems to be posted quickly and easily, so people can keep the process going. We have a lot of homework. Citizens, we have a lot of homework to do to lobby our representatives, whether they take part of this. So as much information as you get out there as quickly as you can, the better off this program is gonna work. And in Cosmopolis, we need to get our volunteer fire department staffed again, whatever that's gonna take. We need to sit down and have a meeting like this and go to the pre-existing things and get it under the bridge and move forward as quickly as we can. That's what needs to happen. For this RFA to succeed.
Yeah.
As far as a whole group, Aberdeen looking on the population, I know a lot of government, federal agencies. The more you have, the more help you can give. Is that gonna be a benefit as bigger we are? To get benefits out of federal, state, grants?
Well,
Is
that's
that-
still,
That's gonna help too.
Yeah, it's not gonna hurt.
Yeah.
I can tell you that too. I think where you're gonna get more bang for your buck though too, is gonna be regionalization. Which to me, in my mind, this fits into it. It's one agency instead of 3 agencies going together on something. And, on the fire side, the grants that I've been involved with, they really like the concept of regional requests. So to me, this kind of fits that bill.
Benefit.
Yeah.
Going to be that too.
Yeah, and another benefit that kind of goes along the lines of this is, and this was talked about in our original planning process, was just the economics of scale. Is, we're sharing the burden between the 3 different agencies into one now. Maybe we don't need to buy, and Daryl kind of alluded to this a little bit, but maybe we don't need to buy. I don't have to buy 4 sets of turnout gear, 4 sets. Maybe between us, you know, we only need 7. You know, we can buy less, and have them reserved. Like just an apparatus. Do we need as many fire trucks and ambulances and agents? You know, we can look at those and maybe pare down the fleet a little bit to keep us within compliance for NFPA and the rating bureau. But maybe not have the upkeep on an older engine and be able to surplus it. So there's, you know, just being larger, there's going to be some inherent savings there. You know, we don't have to buy garbage bags for all 3 stations independently. We can buy just, you know, in bulk for the one, so.
Number of years ago, Chief Washington, Montesano, he was involved in a discussion like that. And that was one of his big things. You can buy 50 feet of hose here, 50 feet of hose there,
Yep.
50 feet of hose there. But now 3 you get together, you're gonna get a less, at a better cost, because you might.
Well, if you're buying that, so yeah, there's the,
You know,
maybe
that-
not
that-
buying as much, or when you buy more, you get, you know, the cost go
Better
better.
price.
Yeah, a better deal.
And I think that's in prior RFA discussions, the big cost of savings in that would be like medical supplies for the EMS side of things. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe.
I guess, I don't know if I missed it or not, but, you know, as this umbrella opens and gets bigger. Does our taxes automatically go up, or if you mentioned that they had to go through.
No, so if, for instance, if the RFA at some point in time needed additional funds, they would have to go out to vote for maintenance and operations levy. So an M and O levy. Yeah.
You know, as we get the personnel, and you want 7. Is this initial cost gonna cover it?
The initial cost won't, but that's why we scaled everything down from our first time going at it. So the number was too big.
So in 2 years, you need 7 people, it's gotta go up.
Then I have to go to your house and convince you that I need 7 people. And then you have to.
I don't think we need 15 now. Okay, so that would have to go to levy to board.
They can, yeah.
Yeah, we can't arbitrarily just, oh, we want another $1 million. And just take it. I mean, it's not gonna have to be approved by the voters for any increases to what we're already bringing in.
Did you have something, Joe?
I want to respond to that as well, and then I have a question. And then with that, excess maintenance and operation levy also states in the statute for regional fire authority. If regional fire authority wanted to go out for additional taxes, they have to do it on an annual basis, whereas if you were a district, you could actually do it a 4-year cycle. So as a taxpayer with the RFA, it's a very they have to ask, I'm a part of an RFA, and for maintenance and operation and costs, we ask our citizens on an annual basis for that additional cost. The process here is a little bit different, but if they were to go out with any type of excess, they will have to ask you every year for that. And then my question is, right now, so based on what we're currently doing, you're paying how much per month to the city of Aberdeen for services?
22,
It's
21,000 and some odd change.
Yeah.
On the EMS side, and fire is a by call at this point.
And so based on, so we all know that, you know, that the possibility of bringing back the volunteer fire department is a possibility. Running the regional fire authority is a possibility. There's some other avenues as well. And then there's always the possibility of doing absolutely nothing, doing it now. What is the cost benefit from, is there a cost benefit for the city and the citizens as far as budgetary wise to go get involved with the regional fire authority versus the city cost versus what you're currently being charged now for the service that is being provided for fire protection, basically, and then you're going to get enough.
The cost that we pay to Aberdeen right now, like we said, is fairly comparable to what the budget is as it sits. That being said, we kind of came into this we came into it, so assuming that cost is going to go up from the city of Aberdeen, or whether we're going to the RFA and paying them, like that cost is going to go up. I mean, there's no way that it really couldn't. So that would cost more than if we had everybody in-house and didn't increase the budget whatsoever. But as we bring on new people, of course, there's new training, new everything. The cost from the city wise, if we went RFA, would be cheaper from the city's perspective, but it would just be the cost would be citizens were paying it rather than the city. So it's I don't want to say, it's not a wash, obviously, because it impacts direct pocketbooks. And that's where the biggest concerns are, but as it sits, if you could just switch back and forth between the three of them right now, it's like right there. But next year, of course, the cost is gonna go up, like everything, like the water, like, okay. I mean, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Totally honest, yeah, we're in the beginning of our budget cycle and I don't know what our EMS availability rate is gonna look like. I would not be surprised if it inches up a little bit. And honestly, the fire contract that we have now is probably not sustainable. But on a per call basis, if it's gonna be more of a long term, we're gonna have to revisit that and a more true established fee, so.
Who is, I apologize for not knowing this, but who is on the plan, the Cosmopolis plan? Of this?
It's myself, Councilmember Cummings, and then Councilmember Wenzel, who's on Zoom. It has to be, RCW mandates 3 elected officials, and because we've only got 5 council, so it's 2 council and myself.
And how confident do you feel that you'll have a recommendation? By
I mean, well,
I need a
If-
recommendation by the next council meeting.
like, if the timeline holds true and if the plan maintains like, oh, February is the date, then I mean, there's gonna have to be a yes or no of what the council wants, one way or the other.
But so it's 3 people, 3,
Three from Kazi, 3 from Aberdeen, 3 from Hope.
right, but I'm just talking about 5, there's 3 for 5 running.
Correct. That's the mandate. It has to be 3 and it has to be 11.
Okay, and you'll have a recommendation by the next meeting.
Right.
Or tonight,
Well, I mean,
I don't.
yeah, we're missing some council, but soon, we're gonna need to figure out soon. That's why we kind of put this together and like I said, we've been in this discussion for 2 months.
Right, that's what I'm
And-
asking about. You get to it, yes or no.
But, and I want to
Yeah.
stress again, this is not their fault.
Yeah.
We approached. The
No, I understand.
volunteer
Yeah.
staff, there was an issue going on over here. We approached, do you want to be part of this? With that, we're also now saying, if you want to be part of this, we are looking to move quick because we've been at it for so long.
No, I
So we want to keep going. And in order for you to have a voting choice, this is your option now, but you can always come in later.
Right, I understand that.
So,
I'm just wondering.
I just wanted to
I'd
clarify,
like-
it's not the push, it's out.
The opportunity. Just because there wasn't a decision, that's my concern.
Gotcha.
More than the decision. Does that make sense?
I think, yeah. Yeah.
So at this point, there's no possibility of the planning committee, changing its, timeframe in which it wants to go to the million people, given up in the bill process.
They can't, that's up to the
That's up
planning
to the
committee,
committee.
we just provide staff.
Is that possible?
Well, I mean,
It is.
like hypothetically, it's possible. Again, like, as far as the city's decision, I didn't want to really answer because, I mean, realistically, it comes down to a council decision. I'm on the planning committee, but it's gonna be their decision. And same with I don't want to speak for the planning commission and speak for Aberdeen and Holcomb and them. I mean, anything's possible.
And
This is-
remember
yeah.
that we were looking at February as the vote.
Yeah.
Because then in November of 2023, that'd be commissioner votes for all 3 cities, so that you all vote Steve to represent Cosmopolis to be on that, Hope Aberdeen vote for theirs, with a start date of January 1st of 2024. So, I mean, you see the date just keeps getting pushed out further when you have to get all those other tests.
And when we're looking at, I mean, like I said, there's the plan could adjust heavily, realistically. We're kind of sharing, this is where we are now, but I mean, there could be input from tonight that could shift how the focus is. And so this is where it is now, but things could change. There's all sorts of hypotheticals. Yeah.
What my mind is going around is the concept of, collaboration and, if for chance the timing can be pushed out, that also gives enough for the public, the Cosmopolis as well as is entering into this process. And it's showing to be maybe a good thing and it can be public relations. If role wasn't built in a day, could potentially continue staying engaged and building the process and building it out and just taking a little bit of time. And if you're to ask most residents, they probably have no idea that this is even taking place right now. And just having that communication might help it go in the long run and make it successful in the next. Right, and our plan of attack would be public forums and town hall meetings like this that are not city-based. They're us-based. So technically, they wouldn't even have to be here to run this and start getting all this information out and share as much as we can. And that would start literally at the end of September, which would give us 4 months.
And
5 months.
also, I think a key point to note is so 4 years ago, a long time ago, Posse was actually asked if they were interested in joining and they were not. So we've done all the work and so I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, Posse was given, and I know that the citizens weren't part of that discussion. I realize that, but Posse was given an opportunity 4+ years ago to join and they chose not to. So Aberdeen and Hopeland, we're ready to move and Posse decided to join in later on. And so I mean, I understand putting, delaying to earn the trust of Posse, but at the same time, we've been working at this for 4 years and we want to make it happen. So I don't mean that, and I mean, that's just.
Hypothetically, the Central Grace Harbor Fire or Regional Fire Authority, as it sits, the plan has been to be on February. The question is now, do we want to jump on the back as it's driving through? So. Yeah.
Great opportunity.
This goes for both. Vote down.
So it's,
Sucked in.
yeah, so it's the majority. It's not, it doesn't.
It's not city to city.
On the, voting pool, it's not city to city. It is the total.
Can you introduce yourself just for the recording? Can you just introduce yourself for the recording? Thank you.
There's been so much. Like, in terms of just kind of compare to the discussion and things like, for people to understand the difference, like, what we're comparing with the $20,000 we spent out compared to the we're not understanding the whole is a completely different. So we really educate on what it's happening. We have a volunteer for to the $20,000. What was the difference of the volunteer?
Pretty comparable. You get. So what was our budget, 250? About 250 for the fire department, so 22,000, so plus fire charges, so depending how many fires we have. I mean, within, I would say give or take 10 to 20,000, like in the grand scheme of things. Comparable.
So
If
you
we.
lose an elected official on the, Posse would not have an elected official as a court. No,
Right.
Yeah.
so you can join late, but so pretty much Posse would not have an elected official as a board member or as a commissioner, and then with that, you would ultimately have to follow all the policies and procedures that have been implemented by Aberdeen and Hillsborough. No, so if, well, in the future, if anything were to ever go back out to vote, like for additional funding,
We would lose our opportunity to vote on putting out a vote for taxing, but we would still vote on. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Zero. That makes zero sense.
So we wouldn't, it would be as if we've got someone at the council meeting, but they're sitting off to the side, so they don't get to vote if more taxes are being put out to voters. But they would still be
yeah.
there at the
But
table. Yeah, the citizens would still get to vote. So, I mean, that's a, yeah,
Never.
Yeah, the way.
not a voting. Because that's how the RFA is. It's built through RCW.
So if you,
Not us,
if you
it's
come
just
in
the way
with,
they built it.
Yeah,
it's because that's how the entity is created. So how the entity is created, is how it.
Yeah.
Unless it were to, I guess unless you were to put the, recreate the entity, recreate the plan and put the plan out for to vote, which
Yeah, there's
would
that
be,
option.
that, I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
They may have already answered it, Nick Valley 260 Holly Lane. So if Halsey came in 2 years later, would that at-large person still only be Aberdeen Coquitlam? It doesn't go to the entire new boundary.
I believe so.
No, at large would still be, at large would be called at large.
Yeah, at large would be-
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They just, but it-
Somebody would have to-
yes,
Yeah.
so a Cosmopolis person could be voted into that at-large seat. But it wouldn't be a dedicated,
It wouldn't be a dedicated.
Correct. but that's the same as if Central Park got added, or Montesano, or like I said, any of them, that they would just, we would fight for it, that. There's a lot more, and if we're putting up somebody from Aberdeen versus somebody from Kazi in an election, obviously, we've got 800 some voters, and you guys, and Aberdeen has 4,000 probably. So it's not a,
But you're gonna get the Hopeman vote because they won't vote for somebody.
yeah, so, but even still, you don't meet that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kathy? 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tonight, yeah. Three. And then, no,
No.
now as it,
Then you
This-
have to restart the plan
yeah,
and do it from all over again.
All
So
new
you
people,
have to
all
start
new
from
Plan,
the
start
beginning.
over in the beginning.
restart, yeah. No, I don't,
Just start with new people. and
Yeah.
They have to reform
You
the
couldn't
committee,
use the
restart the
exact same
plan.
plan you already used. You'd have to. So.
but you could modify, but I mean,
Modify.
it was,
It would
it's,
be,
yeah.
the foundation.
yeah. It would take time. Linda,
So my understanding is the next phase is that the council will vote when they will determine that they will be. That's right.
that's the point.
So with that said, this is not a new point to the citizens in the city. Council members, are you reaching out to constituents, are you returning phone calls? Are you answering their questions before you take this vote?
No one has ever called me, that's my view.
I mean, like I said, that I,
From this meeting, I'm sure there will be. And so, really getting down to the citizens with facts and information that not biased. And providing the best information we can, for these individuals.
and I encourage, I mean, again, speaking to everybody that's listening either tonight or in the future, or whatever. Email addresses for myself and the council and contact information all available at the website. Encourage you to reach out if there's questions, if you have questions about more of the funding mechanisms, go to Julie, go to Corey, I mean, if there's questions, reach out to a council member, myself, a staff member, a neighbor that might know more that wants to reach out, but ask questions. We want the feedback. Yes.
We have a lot of those, and everybody gets, that's a good opportunity to put anything you want to do there. And when everybody is, because most people didn't even know this was going on.
This was. Yeah, this was, we only planned this at the last meeting when we had the report. Like I said, we're 2 months into this and we put this together to make sure that we could get as much community input as we could and try to get that word out. But I mean, water bills don't go out until,
10th of every month.
yeah, so till like next week anyway. So it would have,
And with that, so the RFA previously, so if Posy chooses to be a part of the RFA plan, then there will be notices put in the water bill. So we did it for Aberdeen, for Hopewind. We created a flyer and put it in there with the information. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying as to people should have been notified about this meeting. But in the future, for if Posy decides to be a part of this vote, there will be something to put out as each city does do that.
there was no plan. I mean, there'll be public comment at the next meeting as well. How many citizens? I mean, yeah,
It was 11.
yeah, 1,700. Yeah, I mean, it would be great if we had more people that, I mean, this is actually a great turnout for any sort of public.
Well, I was
meeting.
gonna say, there's more people here right now than in the three open houses forums that we had in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Combined,
Combined.
all of them.
It would be great
They were
if this room was
advertised.
packed, but that's just that's not typical.
Not to say you're wrong, and I agree with you, I'm just saying, you guys participated way more than Aberdeen Hoping did over 6 months.
Yeah.
The post office is always the best place, to post things. We have a board there, everybody goes to post office. And people, you change that regularly, people get in the habit of looking at it. We've had this conversation for years. The post office is the best place to go. The city staff goes there every day that they're open. Every day that they're at City Hall is open, they go there and pick it. It's the easiest place to post something. We have a lock case to be able to do it. And that's where that information should go. It's easy. But the website has gotten better. We still have to get an update, the council contacts still on the website. But the city Facebook page is a good place to post it. And then people can grab it off there and post it on various pages. So, but the post office really is the easiest place to post it. Everybody posts it.
If you had a colored piece of paper, something new, a different color, next time, a different color, I noticed.
That's where I found out about this.
Well, I mean, it was at the post, I mean, it was on Facebook, it was on the website, it was on the, and like I said, that's why we have such a huge crowd. This is,
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, one of our staff brought it down. I mean, the citizen may have posted it as well, but I don't know what to tell you on that. Yeah. I mean, this is.
I put it in. Oh, you use it. That's how I found
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, I don't believe so, because they don't, I mean,
They're private phone
not
numbers.
private phone numbers, if they have, I don't think no council has, it gets the. That's the best avenue, I mean. Yeah, I mean, there's addresses, I mean, I assume there's still phone books available if somebody has, I don't know if somebody has.
Leave a
Yeah.
Message with your phone number, I can pass it on
Yeah.
to the council member and they can call back.
Yeah,
But
I
it
mean,
works.
if anybody wants to leave their phone numbers and a question tonight, council can reach out as well. I mean, there's numerous options.
So. John Schumann. I personally like the beach. Very good. Service level. I think one of the questions. Are there any viable alternatives? Are there really any viable alternatives? And if there are they less expensive? Would it spend just as much? I want to just talk about the RFA. But you can't, you gotta make the RFA, you gotta do those alternatives.
And like we had mentioned that, I mean, we continue to get people interested in talking and volunteering, and we just got at least one. So I mean, if we went just strictly just volunteer of just community members, then the costs would be probably similar to what it is now, and it wouldn't rise as any other costs do. So that's there, but I don't know if that's what you're getting at. Or-
How far those costs compare to the RFA? If you say the cost would remain the same.
If it all happened right now, like I said, that the costs that the city is paying versus what the costs of the RFA and what the citizen would be paying for the monthly and the property tax and everything. If it were right now and it was just a switch one to the other, those would be comparable.
So it would cost about what you're saying is to the citizen, the individual person. It would cost around the same to try to.
No, the overall cost would be. So now we're taking out property taxes and we're funding it. So right now we charge $6, give or take, $6.75 a month to the citizen. If the RFA were passed, it would be $29. So that extra $20 a month, $240 a year, that is the extra cost to the citizen. Was that clear then? That,
No, that's
no,
for the-
that is for, that's for everybody.
Oh.
Monthly, everybody, same cost. The property tax. The property tax wouldn't go up. Your property tax is already, this is how much is taken out. The city would just get less.
All of the property, all of the funds eventually boil down to citizens. Property owners.
Yeah,
Property.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's all, yeah, all of them.
No matter what channel they flow through to get. Are you saying that the cost to the property? Approximately 20. Higher. If we go anywhere versus.
So if you
If
go
it
to the
were to
RFA, it'll be an additional, approximately additional $20 a month on your availability fee, which will be billed through the city, or on your water bill, which will be billed through the city. But on your property per household, on your property taxes, you'll see the 50-cent EMS levy. So it's 50 cents per 1,000. So like, for instance, on a $200,000 home, it'd be $100.
Yeah, I mean, but the question is how do those things compare to an alternative if you don't go to the RFA? If we were to maintain the one to break down, that's really about the only.
Yeah, there's other
There's a couple
alternatives.
other
That's the obvious kind of alternative.
So we continue to contract with that, we're gonna pay that least.
Correct.
Just like the water.
Correct.
You pay somewhere later.
But correct me if I'm wrong, is that I believe it was stated earlier that regardless, Causey is gonna have to increase their rates because you cannot continue to maintain, whether it's to continue with the fire department and still maintain a shared services agreement with Aberdeen, like costs need to increase, correct?
We would have to increase our fire budget regardless. Even with the cost increase to Aberdeen next year, we're still looking at budget increases to build out the equipment and the training.
So, yeah. So without, I mean, like we talked about, there's that ESCI study, the possibility of like looking into it deeper. That's an 8 to 12 turnout, 8 to 12 week turnout. So if we went into that, then that would force us to either step away from or convince the rest of the planning commission to push out the plan, but that's kind of up in the air. That
I missed the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. There's a study available, but it takes 8 to 12 weeks. It would just look at options. It would not give us, it would just look at, here's what is available. It would not say, this is better than this.
It will not tell you what each option will cost. It'll just say, these are your options. You pick what you want to do.
And I think it's a critical question that I haven't heard answered. Unless I'm misinterpreting. The bottom line. On this, I mean, that's going to be a serious question.
The cost,
Is it going to cost the average citizen more than RFA and to reinstate a long-term fire?
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
$21 a month.
$20. That's the household.
Yeah,
Per utility account.
Per
House-
utility,
Per person. Household.
correct, per utility unit, so. But
Yeah.
yes, per household.
Each bill I send out will have
So
an addition.
$20 a month.
The property tax doesn't change.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
50 cent.
50 cent.
Over the 50, but I mean, as far as
Yeah.
yeah, so, like.
Why can't you assume that it's so great?
Yeah.
It just seems to be so great with this. Well, 6 months ago.
How long ago? I know, I mean, we had talked about it, but I don't know of any discussion since.
Yeah, but we never end up doing the study. But yes, I recall.
So that $20 a month per household. And then 50 cents thousand.
Yeah,
So for instance, recently I did a cost estimate as to what it would look like for 4 different houses in Causey.
You know, I don't think.
Do you,
but we know that,
The question, you know, 50 cents. That I get.
I mean, I was gonna give you an overall increase per year. For the year. To what you're
to
paying
now,
now.
Compared to that.
so.
So I compared what 4 houses, what you're paying now to what it could look like. Do you want to know the range as to what I did?
No.
So it went from around $260 a year to $310 a year, and that changes based upon the assessed value of the home. That's where that fluctuation is. The monthly fee wouldn't change. That's the $20 a month on the annual bill, but the 50 cents per 1,000, that's where the fluctuation is. So an annual increase of approximately, like I said, but I did 4 homes. The bottom line was a $260.72 annual increase, and that's everything. And then the max increase that I calculated was $309.02. So I'm not saying that's the highest valued home in Causey. I'm just saying out of the 4 homes that a citizen asked me to do, those are the figures I
That's a
came.
range.
Yes.
Property tax increases. That we would get.
That includes the property tax and that $20 a month. That's total cost increase. So that's everything. That's that $20 a month and that 50 cents levy, just in total annual cost increase. Yes. So I did 4 examples of Causey, have 4 houses in Causey, so that's the total annual cost.
Those are the costs. Then the question. How much they pay from the party is we have to raise what income level. A similar amount to cover the volunteer fire department, or could we cut our taxes? No. That's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, cutting, I mean, there needs to be more funding. From it. How that gets there or not, but funding is gonna have to increase, whether it's. $1, $2 a month, or $25 a month, or whatever.
So just $25. Basically mitigated by unknown increase. Just. Continue.
Yeah.
We have to have a volunteer. We have to achieve.
We can take interest now. We've got interest and we've got a few volunteers that have signed up, but we're nowhere near anywhere that would match a mutual aid necessity.
Too official, and I think we'll get ready to go through the process. Or with some other,
How long before we're,
A while.
And then we don't have any problem.
yeah, close to a year.
I mean, it's, yeah, we're like, it's not anything that we're looking at. I mean, we're getting people and getting interest from all over the area, and we're not doing just Cosmopolis, so we're expanding out. I mean, but yeah, people aren't beating down our door, and it's not as if we don't go out to vote in February. Realistically, by February, we're just gonna have a full, fat and happy staff that, I mean, based on what the past months have been.
Yeah,
It's
you know, people knocking down their doors, they want to volunteer. A fire district, not district, but a regional district, well, they can move up and have the services for the community. Honestly, I'd like to say, I could see that happening here, but I don't.
I would say that, I mean, if we had a fully functioning, I mean, 15, 20 people here and everybody, I mean, paramedics and the whole thing, and then the RFA was an option. This isn't an apples and, I mean, this isn't a comparing to fully functioning as it is fully funded with more funding versus RFA. Is this possible now and reasonable now and planning for the future? Yes.
something very, a little bit ago as far as dedicating people as far as. We have a volunteer fire department. What do we pay Aberdeen? Okay, volunteers that as in with the. We have to pay Aberdeen by the month. Going. Association. Our fire rating is gonna be better than short. Response time, of Aberdeen before the Ozzy is gonna be higher. Something the board can talk to their people when they ask. $25 a month extra now for this versus what my insurance is gonna go up on my house. Went up 150 last year, and this year, really no reason, because insurance went up. So $25 might not look so bad compared to my fire rating going 7, 8, 9, because the response time for our team get to me. You can talk to your people about that when we call in and ask questions. It's not just the $25 a month. If we don't do something, your insurance rating is gonna go up, and you're gonna be paying a whole lot more for insurance.
John.
I was gonna say the numbers would stay the same, but then stay where we're at. So does that mean if we had a fully staffed volunteer fire department, say 25 personnel? Well, their costs are incurred.
Well, I mean, if we get to the, I'm just kind of comparing to what, I mean, as it was, I mean, budgeted this year, let's say it was set that way and everything was fine versus the amount that we paid to Aberdeen. those are comparable costs. Obviously, if we go up to 25, or as we're adding on new people and have to do training and background checks and turnouts and this and that, costs are gonna have to go up, but
To answer your question, John, I think. I don't know exactly how many people it would take to trigger the mutual aid agreement again. We would have to have a fair amount that we could go benefit Aberdeen and Hope thing. Yeah.
And then what that is, obviously that would change from 100% of everything. So I'm just curious, if, you know, in terms of work and let's say that the volunteer group. Maybe even if it's up to 3/4 of that, would that change that pricing mechanism regardless of what you.
we realistically, I mean, we've had very informal talks and there's nothing that's like set, but I mean, we would need to get up to that realistically 10 level before the conversation gets.
Yeah, I
to-
think you're gonna need to have a sustainable model of operation.
And not just
And I
10 from
can't
like
put a
random.
number on that, you know,
Yeah.
that's gonna be.
You
the
you
city
could,
to
you
feel
could have,
comfortable
yeah. There could be
with their level of
25
service.
green people or 10 kind of
10
seasoned. I mean, that,
people, you know,
yeah,
so.
so that changes things.
Have a hard time figuring if you budgeted 233,000.
With the,
Out of our budget for the fire department. And you're operating with volunteer fire department, 230 plus a year. If that's the number. And then that stops, and still, there's still things that occur that goes on. But then we pay Aberdeen $20,000 a month plus incurred fees. How is it not $230,000 plus the $20,000 in the funding? How are we not going to hear $500,000 a year? As for a fire department right now?
There's no operation.
yeah, no operating costs and that's what the,
Our operating costs. We have labor, we have, I mean, basically our operating costs. When I talk about budgeted and actuals. You know, our actual numbers for the fire department are never. 170,000, that was
Like-
you know, there's a lot of things in that. Fire truck. And so it costs us more. We're paying having $20,000 a month and we didn't use.
yeah, no, it definitely costs us more now.
Okay, so.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
So-
yeah, there's
My
additional
point
costs
is,
as well.
and, I think Schumacher, I don't think you got the answer to the question is that it's costing us more right now. How much more will it cost? Costs us roughly $300 a year more for the RFA at the base rate. If we start adding one person or two people or four or seven, it's gonna cost even more.
And it got voted.
Our
So,
volume is going to grow.
Yeah,
Our house, we're building that more stuff. Our call volume is going to increase, it does every year. When we've got to get ahead of this thing. We started this thing in April of last year. We try to make certain people understanding that 12 volunteer fire department members can't continue at the same pace, so we need some help to get that number up. We need 20, 25 people here at this station and work. We have to have a very good working relationship with Aberdeen Hope. My hope is we can do it in an RFA. But we can't bleed the system. We've got streets we gotta deal with, we've got a whole heap of other things. The council has a lot of work. And the citizens want to help for the most part. We gotta start communicating. And I get smirks and things like that when I say postings in the post office. But I took a picture yesterday. There's nothing posted in the post office. Other than a citizens post. So the staff could do a little better job communicating. We're having the same conversation we did a year ago. No,
can I, so you briefly mentioned the growing of adding 1 staff, 3 staff, 7 staff members. If, so when I talked about that different staffing model, that is in the original plan. So the staffing wouldn't continuously increase, it would actually be in that original plan. And so the cost that would be put out to citizens would be the same, would be the actual cost. It wouldn't necessarily like grow.
After the original plan, there have been, Southeast recently, they went back and said, hey, we need more operating and we do this. So they
The
got-
goal is to not have to. So the staffing model would be the original funding mechanism. So the funding mechanism that would be written into the plan would include the total staffing as to whatever that plan. So if the plan has 3 additional staff members or 7 additional staff members, the funding mechanism in the plan will incorporate those additional staff members. So, and the RFA committee will designate if they want additional staffing.
So let's say, we need additions. Need additions. Aberdeen will bring these additions. So we need them part of it. So to make all this thing work, they're gonna need additional staff. So the really put it out there so adding staff, right? And then the same. As you're adding volunteers hopefully in the system, you can help bolster. You know, we took 12 people out of the training already. They can use the extra man, the extra person. So the win-win for everyone is put the RFA bill correct. If the staffing level where they should be. And fight down and pay the extra fee. Make it happen. Question is, what else are we gonna pay? You know, we gotta pay for certain people to ride. We gotta say, there's all kinds of things, transparency. It's not everything. See, I hope we have another meeting next week. And I don't know what you do. As far as the representatives from our bands, I think it's more of the city.
I would think.
Yeah.
You need to be.
So I'm gonna call it a night.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't wanna rush everybody, but I mean, we're now getting to 3 hours in. And I, unless there was something that we haven't kind of covered or anything, I wanna. Get close.
To the, my goal is that we need for, so listen to your. Reach out. Don't be biased. It's a fact. Thank you.
Like another meeting for the company, make some sort of individual that people can see and side by side. Like for your that would help make it easier. And that's the, I think, the biggest lesson here. Maybe make it really clear. Here's what this is for the next meeting, so people have a chance to talk to their council for today. Here's what we're talking about. Before 3 lots of our volunteers now, right now we're paying, and then. So that will be. So that actually, so that's typically what we do. So during the whole entire previous RFA process, that's what we've done, and that's what was included in like the flyer that we sent out in the water bills. That's. We're more than happy to do it. And like I said, I did do it for someone, and I'm happy to use those numbers as an example. But again, that's a lot of additional time that. And energy, like, I mean, so yes, we want to sell you, but at the same time, before we get too invested, we need to know that causing it. So, I mean, Aberdeen Hopeland joined in all in right away. And so I'm happy to, I mean, like, we can come back and present those numbers, but again, it was one of those things to where we really wanted to know that Causey was in before we spent hours and hours on everything. So that's kind of why the whole presentation, like, again, for Aberdeen Hopeland previously, we held open houses and we did presentations and handed out flyers, and everybody went door to door and handed out my business card to everyone because I did the calculations. So that is done. It's just usually done as we're working on the plan and as we're educating. So we're currently working on the plan, and we haven't completed the plan, and we don't know what the plan needs to include because we don't know if Causey's in. So the numbers I'm giving are very rough estimates because I don't know what Kazi's number, I mean, I can give rough estimates, but I haven't pulled in the volunteer figures because. And granted, it's not gonna make a huge difference, but. I don't wanna spend hours and hours working on something when. If it's not gonna work out and Kazi's gonna back out.
Yeah.
I think we can take the floor that we've had, four houses.
Yeah,
Have
it's just
Julie, this is automatic.
Yeah, we could,
have a spreadsheet, all of
Yeah.
them drop in
Yeah,
the
no,
numbers,
that's-
it's not-
yeah. so.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Anybody can call.
But like I said, I don't want to rush anybody, but we are at 3 hours on this. I would say. Anybody, if there's any questions that we didn't get, or your neighbors or anybody you talk to, I mean, of course, reach out to the staff, city staff, reach out to your council, reach out to me. Information emails are on the website. I mean, I think. I'm kind of speaking for most of the room. I think most of you probably know where we all live and how to get a hold of us if you needed to, or you know someone who does. So if you have concerns, reach out, but it is 9 o'clock. And so if there's any, unless there's any, unless you guys mind, I'm gonna call it a close. As of right now, no, we'll have to plan because we're missing 2 council members too. So I'm not gonna say yes, I'm not gonna say no. But yeah, 9 o'clock, I will call this meeting to a close. Thank you, everyone. And great comments and insight. Well,